Everybody, and welcome. Today is Path of Light. This is the fourth week and will be the completion for this teaching, sharing of this particular curriculum. Next week, we return to Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, what I am calling the 2025 semester, even though I am connected to reality and I know that we are still in 2024, but it will be just for streamlining of language. So anyone who is already an enrolled student, you do not have to do anything. I will simply keep you on the list and keep on sending out the email invites to you. And you don't have to pay any additional fees. Returning students or people from the far distant past, you are always welcome to come back. Again, no fee is required. New people, you're absolutely welcome to come on board. And for people who have been watching my lectures sporadically on YouTube, I'm happy that you access my information. It's why I put it up on YouTube. You can benefit as a student by formally enrolling in the class, because then you get to watch all of the recorded whiteboard homeworks that I'm always talking about, and you'll watch them and you'll be like, now I finally understand what in the world Aurora was talking about. Because even though I might have a 3-hour long presentation, I still do not always have the verbal energy to talk about and fit in everything that I jam-packed into those whiteboards, which are really information dense. And you can download the whiteboards and save them exactly the way that you would save like a book that you would put on your library shelf or something like that. So I want you to know all of the class materials. I want you to save them. I want you to have access to them. I want you to keep them for forever and not just have it be something that you have limited access to when you have internet connectivity and when you're formally enrolled, or whatever, paying some kind of a subscription fee to some kind of an access platform or whatever. So it's meant to be information that's out there in the wild. And same thing with my PDF that is called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna Manual for Flight. It is an informal document with very, very bad spelling and grammar, because that's as good as I can do it. But I want people to take that information, save it. You can print it out for yourself. You can share it. My only request is that if you share or quote from that information, please attribute it to me. But other than that, it's out there in the wild. It has been intentionally sent out in order to be a part of the world and to go as far and wide as it possibly can. So today I'm going to be talking about what I call primary light, which is the light that is emitted or goes on its journey in its connection to the sun or a star as the portal through how it enters into experienced reality. And then contrasting that with what I would call derivative light or secondary or tertiary light, because it is not coming directly from a star. So that's any other light source. That could be a candle, a campfire, a light bulb, this computer screen, or some other form of luminescence. And I'm going to talk all about the different forms of light that are not primary light, their qualities, how electricity is related to light, and the connection between light and gravity, light and matter, and massfulness. That is not a word, but the quality of having mass. Okay, so we're going to do deep stuff today. Before I begin on all of those things, I want to speak to this question that is from Chris. Thank you for being here in my class. And Chris says, the sun and the stars are plasma. Is Earth solid, gas, and liquid? What is the moon? So the Earth is considered a solid. First of all, thank you for your question. The Earth is a solid. So in our solar system, we actually have different qualities of planets. There are the planets that are defined as the rocky planets that are like a rock in the world. And our planet counts as one of them. So there is like a physicality that we would define as solid matter to this planet. And same thing with like Mercury, and same thing with Mars. But if we look at a planet like Jupiter, that is called one of the gas giants, that planet is a gas. So even though like our planet has gas, atmosphere, and then at a certain point, you hit the crusty outer shell, the candy coating outer shell. I told you I was going to be totally serious today too. Candy coating outer shell. And then if you go through that, of course, you get to the sweet gooey inside, which is the molten mantle. And then the juicy Tootsie Roll Pop center, which is the crystalline core of our planet. But our planet is mostly considered to be solid with a little bit of gas around it. But like Jupiter, if you went in through the outer layers of gas, you would just keep going. There is no there. So there is no way for you to fly to Jupiter and like stand on its surface and plant a flag and say, I claim this planet in the name of whatever is your name, there's nothing to stand upon. You could not do it. So to get through the states of matter as it relates to the planets of our world. How about the moon? What is the moon made out of? The moon would be considered a rock or a solid. However, I've talked about this, that I do not consider Earth's moon to be a naturally occurring astronomical object, that I think that it has physicality present, but that it has then been architected using technology. So a good analogy would be someplace like New York City, which is an island that is made of solid rock, but then humans have built spires on top of it and tunneled out the rock and done stuff to it to make it a different form than its natural form. I think that's what has happened on the moon. Naturally occurring piece of rocky material that then has been tunneled out and changed and shifted and has a lot of technology that is running through it that is not part of its natural form at all. So great question. Thank you. And Michael S., thank you for being here, says, isn't our second moon and made mostly of silica? I don't know what order it is or how long it has been here in terms of linear time or what its composition is. But thank you for that. But I do know the effects that it is having on consciousness and consciousness freedom, which are consciousness diminishing effects. And I also know that Earth's moon, I wouldn't say it's habited, or inhabited, but I would say that there's a presence there of otherworldly creatures that have augmented themselves and are more empowered through their augmentation than humanity, and they are part of the consciousness diminishment and diminishing of your freedom on this planet. So I didn't want to say things like screwing you over or use other loose language like that, but the guys on the moon are not your friend, and they're not good people, and they're very, very naughty, and they're doing a lot of naughty things to you, okay? All right, great questions. Of course, I will continue to answer more questions throughout class, and I try to keep up with it, even though sometimes I have my notes in the way, and then I'm not seeing your questions, but I'm going to be really attentive to you because I know that's important in terms of being able to feel seen and heard in the class and not feel ignored. Okay, so let's talk about primary. So sometimes in my notes and in my whiteboard sharings, I was finding out my language, and I talked about natural light versus artificial light. And then I realized that those are not effective word usages, because truly all of the light that we are experiencing is a phenomenon of the natural realm. But as I described, some of it originates in the sun and the stars, which key point are consciousness doorways that are emitting information into the world. And they emit information consciously. So they're not just dead, stupid nuclear furnaces, spewing information anywhere in a random way. They are very, very intentional points of consciousness that are intentionally beaming energy. Just as I spoke to you about, I think it's whiteboard 3, the concept of a tree is not just merely reflecting green energy over to you. And then you're like, duh, here's a bunch of green energy. I guess there's a tree over there. The tree is sentient and self-aware, and it is literally beaming energy to you in the color green and containing a lot of information and contextual relevance, trying to communicate with you intentionally, just like I am not just here randomly moving my mouth and just making random mouth sounds. I'm intentionally making mouth sounds to send information to you. I'm talking to you. So all of this is the recognition, the metacognitive recognition of intention being shared in this world. But then there are other light sources. So this particular sharing of information, I tell you that, where do I get my curriculum from? Literally from questing with my mind. I send out my tendril of attention and I touch on things because I'm like, okay, I want to know about this. I want to know about this. So for a long time, to do this class, I sent out my tendril of attention and I touched on the sun. I touched on pure light. I touched on these primary sources of light. And then I was sitting in my bedroom at night. It's like somebody can't sleep, staring up at my light bulb. And I'm like sending out my tendril of attention to my light bulb. And I'm like, well, duh, like, what about light that comes off of a light bulb? And what about light that comes off of a fluorescent light bulb? And what about light that comes off of an LED or a computer screen or a television? What are these lights? What are their qualities? How can I speak about and share about these lights? Let me just hydrate for a moment. Thank you so much. It looks blue because I have methylene blue in here. So the answer is there's light that is the pure light that comes from the singularity at the center of the plasma ball, that is the sun and the stars. And then there are other forms of light, let's call them derivative. Primary light comes directly to the portals of consciousness. Then there are other forms of light that are derivative. And electricity, I would also classify as a form of light, even though it is not optical light and we do not see it as brilliance. I won't go through the time to draw that whole diagram again, but 2 weeks ago in this class, I shared that diagram that I did all across your screen of like going from the Bose-Einstein condensate, solid, liquid, gas, plasma, beam, and up at the top of your screen, I showed how there's infrared as a waveform, then optical light, then X-rays plus, and I shared all of that as being part of the spectrum of light. All of those waveforms move at the speed of light, and they also are related to or encompass in this definition electromagnetism. So electromagnetism also is a waveform presence that is the definition of what we call light. And it would be traveling at light speed, but for the mechanics that I'm going to teach you about today. And it is a carrier of information, but not total information. So now let's go to a whiteboard. This is what I was doing for the past few minutes before I actually started class. Existing whiteboard. I'm excited. This is going to be awesome. All right, good. Like Aurora, I'm scared already. What am I looking at? Don't be scared. You can do this, everyone. Let me choose a color that just contrasts so you can see everything that's going on over here. Okay. Press the thing. Every time I have to press a thing and press a thing. Every time I have to press a thing, my energy goes away. I'm not going to press any more things. Stop it. Go away. Stupid thing. Go. All right. So this happy little fella over here is the sun. All right. And I'm showing it as the sun in the traditional model where you have a centralized plasma ball and then all of these beams of light that are clearly shooting away from the sun. So this is in the standardized model that you're familiar with up until this point, not my path of light model, for the ease of this sharing. So I can be consistent across all of these different types of light emitters. So this is the primary emitter of light, which is consciousness and intelligence into the world. Over here, we have what humanity has mostly used for many millennia as non-primary sources of light. You've got this little thing over here, which is meant to represent a campfire. And this over here is meant to represent a candle. So of course, campfire would also include anything like a torch or anything like that. And candles would also include anything like an oil lamp or some of these other things. But these are both forms of combustion. And we went over combustion and the molecular chemistry of what is happening in the activity known as combustion in last week's class. And I would urge everyone to go back and access that, and also to access the whiteboards that inform you in even greater detail about what combustion is, because it's a rearrangement of the fabric of space-time on a micromolecular level, changing the topology of the shape of the surface of time-space so that the different molecules bond in their different quote-unquote comfy chairs. And also when light is sequestered, when light is emitted, and how it takes light to emit light. You guys all know this. Like this pile of wood over here, it ain't just gonna light itself. Like if you want a campfire, what are you gonna have to do? It doesn't just burst into flames. What do you have to do? You guys are smart. You're like, oh, Laura, you have to light it with a match or rub two sticks together. Yes, correct. You need a spark. That spark is the little piece of light that then causes this chain reaction, molecular combustion that then emits a lot of light, okay? So you have energy in the form of cellulose. Over here, you have long glucose strings or chains that are the cellulose that the plant originally formed. And when you add that little spark of light to it, the cellulose then jumps up out of its super comfy futon, the molecules rearrange, And there is both here, these little red dots are meant to represent infrared, which we perceive as non-optical light, but which we feel tactile sense-wise as light that is known as heat. And also these yellow strings that are meant to represent beams of light that are optical light. So the first thing that you have to comprehend is that a lot of the intelligence that's coming off of the sun is in the form of incandescent light. Sorry, yes, it is in the form of, I didn't say it exactly right. I meant to say infrared because I was looking at the light bulb over here. That's why I said the word incandescent. So rewind, and now let me speak this correctly. A lot of the light that is coming, darn it, go back to the thing, off of or originating from the sun is infrared light. So that's what the little red dots over here are infrared. The long yellow strings are optical light. So you have infrared, which we experience as heat. That is actually 45% of the total output of this beautiful ball of consciousness is in the form of infrared, which is heat. I told you about the necessary levels of intelligence that are required on the surface of your planet just to be able to support biological life, because you have to have enough heat intelligence to be able to make sure that oxygen isn't frozen and also that water isn't frozen. If you only had frozen water, you could not have most of the biological processes in your world. You guys already know this. You're like, duh, Aurora, we already know that because nothing is alive in Antarctica except for some penguins and scientists. Now you're like, that is correct. And same thing with some places like Siberia, permafrost, places where it's always frozen. You're like, duh, Aurora, you can't grow plants where it is frozen. Why? Because the water is frozen and you need to have water in its non-frozen state so that your molecules of water can come apart and they can rebond and you can have this fluidity that we comprehend as the liberation of light from matter. And so none of those biological processes can happen when, again, water is frozen or oxygen is frozen. So absolutely essential to have enough infrared intelligence coming from your sun star to make sure that your planet is warm enough to be able to support biological life, right? But then you also have optical light that comes emits from the star. So now let's talk about in the past 100 or 200 years. That's what all of this stuff over here represents. The technological forms of industrialized technological post-industrial, I'm not sure how to describe this, but basically you have light bulbs that are machines, made by machines. And you've got incandescent, fluorescent, and LED. Now, incandescent light bulbs are the ones that are the closest to combustion, but they are not combustion. So over here in the center of your incandescent light bulb, you have a filament that is a superheated piece of metal, but it is not burning, but it is superheated. And so it is emitting both infrared, little strings of red, and also optical light. So the difference between these two things is that in this combustion, the fuel source is consumed through the process of combustion. And of course, it leaves behind ashes. Can you please mute yourself? I cannot stop what I'm doing in the meeting to mute you. Thank you. And I will say it too many times and I get very unhappy. You leave behind ashes in this process of combustion, but you do not leave behind ashes in the process of heating this filament to have incandescent light. And so in many ways, this was a technological upgrade for humanity that was very limited by the hours that could be worked and the type of work that could be done under these forms of non-primary light. With the invention and utilization of incandescent light bulbs, humans could do a lot more work and do it a lot more efficiently. But one of the qualities of incandescent light is you can see it emits heat. It emits both optical light and heat. I said you got to mute yourself. I can't deal with you. You can hear me. You can do it. Please listen. It emits both light and heat. And the heat was sometimes considered to be positive and beneficial, but in many circumstances not. So like in the early days of the film industry, like movies, films, They would have actors on a stage. They would have a lot of these types of lights going on to be able to make the place bright enough for their film to catch people's faces on film. But it also meant that there was so much heat that like their makeup is melting off their face because they're all so very, very, very hot all the time. All right. So that is why, of course, there were subsequent developments in artificial lighting. Got fluorescent. Fluorescent light does not emit the same spectrum of light that you get in terms of optical light from the sun. In fact, it's very limited. It doesn't emit any heat. Of course, you can touch a fluorescent bulb and not burn your hands, but also it will not keep you warm. So like if you have a greenhouse in the middle of the winter and you're trying to keep your plants warm and you have just fluorescent lights, your plants will die because they will receive light, but they will not receive the heat that they require for their microbial action and for many aspects of photosynthesis. And fluorescent light, in terms of the optical light that it emits, is not true to sunlight. Unless you get very, very specific fluorescent lights that are called full spectrum bulbs, and same with LED bulbs, and we'll get into that and what that is too. But fluorescent lights, unless they are carefully crafted, only emit a certain amount of the spectrum, and the spectrum includes, I'll hold up a little rainbow over here, the entire rainbow, like all the way red, all the way up through violet. But fluorescent lights are heavy on the blue and green. That's why I made their light over here, these little blue dashes, because it doesn't really have that same warmth to it, and is not a very nourishing form of light at all. So incandescent bulbs is somewhat of a good replacement for natural sunlight. And if you're an artist like me, it's not that bad to paint under incandescent bulbs if it's nighttime or whatever, but you don't want to paint under fluorescent lights because you will not see the true colors of your painting. And you'll do this whole painting and then wake up in the morning and look at it in natural sunlight. You're like, oh, like those colors look terrible because you mixed your colors under fluorescent lights. Another example is never try on your clothing or your bathing suits or whatever in a dressing room that is lit with fluorescent lights because you will look terrible. It makes you look like a zombie. It makes you look like you have dark blue circles under your eyes and like you have all these blue veins going through your skin. That is because of the frequency of light that it emits. So please know also that there are many educational experiments that have been done recognizing that fluorescent lights in school classrooms, which most public schools in the United States, that is how they light their circumstances there, cause terrible behavioral problems, terrible attention deficits, and other things that make it very, very uncomfortable for children to be in that learning environment. And that so much improvement happens in people's neurological capacities and cognitive processing capacities when you stop making them be under fluorescent lights and just replace it with regular incandescent bulbs, because these guys are going to be the closest to the sun. And what fluorescent lights are actually doing is experimenting with the excitation of noble gases, which is actually working on the level of atoms being stimulated, so that if I just drew without even changing colors, here's the nucleus of an atom, here's one electron shell, and here's another electron shell. And when you stimulate that atom, then the electron over here jumps up to its next level of excitation. And then when it stops being excited, it goes back down to its restful state. And when it goes back down to its restful state, it emits a little bit of light. And that is pretty much how we're jiggling electrons to be able to get photons to be emitted. But it does not emit a good recipe. It's a very, very limited recipe of what you are receiving. Then now let's look at LEDs. These are relatively new in our world. And have become very inexpensive to produce and inexpensive in terms of electricity to make them run. And these are the closest thing we've got to a superconductor. This little green thing at the inside of the light emitting diode is a type of crystalline structure that energy runs through. So this is electricity. These are the plugs where electricity goes in there. And as electricity runs from one of these posts to the other post, and it goes across that crystalline structure, the electricity begins to emit light. It is the closest thing in all of this apparatus to really portray for us the direct relationship between light and electricity. So as I'm laying in my bed at night, can't sleep, staring at my electric light bulb and considering the miracle of light, I'm thinking about, well, the light is coming off of the light bulb. Wait, I'll just get a different color here. Here's light coming off of the light bulb, right? And then it's hitting my eye, but it doesn't come from the light bulb. It's not like all this light is sitting inside of the light bulb and then is waiting to jump out at me. I had to be like, well, okay, questing with my mind, where does the light that's in the light bulb come from? And I followed the light bulb. These are the little electrical, I want to say circumstances, the connectors that connect the light bulb to the wall. So here's the light bulb being connected to a little power outlet in the wall. And then what happens from there? The light bulb, the power outlet in the wall, actually connects to this. This is meant to represent, this crazy over-exaggerated drawing here. It's meant to represent a power line. In my neighborhood and in my community, the power lines are held up by, these are big, giant, tall poles, like utility poles made out of tall tree limbs. And then these would be a super exaggerated version of a copper wire, okay? So this copper wire that is, of course, covered with insulator brings electricity to the house, to the plug over here and the light plugs. And you're like, duh, Aurora, we are not kindergartners, we know this. I'm like, okay, stick with me, guys, stick with me, all right? And of course, that is truthful also for fluorescent and LED lights. Now we have to talk about what electricity is. And wait, first, before we do that, let's do the whole entire journey, because the electricity doesn't live in this wire. It is carried by this wire. Where does it live or where does it come from? This is the little box over here is meant to represent the power plant. And let me draw the arrow in the opposite direction, because the arrow actually goes from the power plant to the wires, through the wires to the plug and to the electric light. So we're actually looking at the origin of this light that is not primary light in the power station, and the power station runs on probably natural gas. We did that in class last week. Methane, and how methane plus a small amount of light that is a spark creates a chemical chain reaction that causes the emission of a lot of light and a lot of heat in the form of combustion. And that is what we're getting here, except the light and the heat. If we just burned a lot of methane over here at the power plant, that definitely would not light up my light bulb in my bedroom at night. It'd be like great for people that live next to the power plant. They can see at night, but I wouldn't see anything. So what happens is that light and heat has to be transformed into an electrical impulse. And that is what we have over here in this little diagram. And in this diagram, the purple dots are the nuclei of the different atoms. These are not drawn to scale. And thank you for laughing. And then these dark gray shells, that is meant to be an electron shell. So an electron has mass. I'm going to make a little green dot. It's a little thing that has mass. You could weigh it on a scale, all right? It's stuffity stuff that is definitely considered matter. But the electron is bouncing around and moving at such a fast pace in this subatomic realm that we cannot actually pin down what are its coordinates in space. And we're starting to talk about deep stuff now about space and time, because some things have mass, some things do not have mass. Some things are experiencing time, some things are not experiencing space. When I draw this electrical impulse that comes from the power station, and what happens is it is carried, this electrical impulse is carried from electron to electron to electron. The electrons themselves have mass. That means that they are experiencing space in the continuum known as space-time. But the impulse of electricity itself has no mass. It is considered pure electricity or pure impulse or pure energy. It is only experiencing time. Let's go over here to the sun and get a different color. So I've drawn this for you many occasions, many classes. This is a simplification to be able to show the stretching of the warpage of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness that this sun star creates. It creates this divot or downward dimpling or warping, because this is plasma. The sun is plasma, and it creates the warping of the fabric of space-time because it has mass. Plasma has mass. Do you know what else on this page that I'm drawing for you here is plasma? You guys are smart. You can tell me in your mind, I'm telepathic. Correct. This campfire flame is plasma, and this candle's flame is plasma. And what is special about plasma is that it carries electricity. So actually, if we took some electricity, we could send it through either this campfire and they come out the other side. It could come through a candle's flame. Candles' flames are conductors of electricity. Plasma force fields are conductors of electricity, all right? That means that both a candle's flame and the flame of a fire in your fireplace has some amount of weight to it. How do you put it on a scale? Like, this is very difficult, but just know that it has an interrelationship with the world of gravity because it has mass. And let me erase this so you don't get confused. Now, what about these guys? What about these yellow strings of light? They are beams. And when you remember, I did that graph across your screen, beams were all the way to one side as the most organized form of light energy. And definitely not something that has mass. Beams do not have a weight. They do not interact with the fabric of time-space and create gravity wells. They experience, this is big stuff, so please listen. They experience time, but they do not experience space. That is everything that I've been teaching you with my current new model that shows the photon loop that balloons outward like that from the central singularity. And that loop, actually, let's leave it there. I'll draw it for the rest of this lecture. That loop, and now it looks like Mickey Mouse. That represents space-time, the fabric of space-time and consciousness. So that represents a combination, like chocolate and peanut butter, two things together. Wait, let me just hydrate here. Space and time, because space and time are interrelated. Like once you create space, you've got point A to point B, and then you've got time. How long does it take to travel from point A to point B? But that's from the practicality sense of your realm of five senses. Because you want to know, like, how long does it take for me to walk to the river? That's an important survival thing. How long does it take for me to stretch out my hand, grab a glass of water, and bring it to my lips? That's a survival thing. But what we're talking about now is light body and deeper consciousness considerations that are a different level of like your survival on a soul level to be able to comprehend this. So the photon does not experience space, but it does experience time. This is analogous to and similar to, oops, wait, I wanted to keep that, but keep that, or erase this. The journey of this impulse of electricity. The impulse of electricity is similarly pure information, pure energy that does not have mass. How is it transported? How is it transferred along this wire? Like, you can't take it for granted now because you're in a world that is highly electrical. First of all, copper is a crystal, and every single one of these little molecules here is supposed to represent the crystalline infrastructure or highly organized molecular structure of copper, and has to be highly organized because you have to be able to have these electron shells lined up in a way that this energy signal that is non-physical can bounce along through this physical infrastructure. So this is what's important and what you can think about in your deep reveries. When you're in the bathtub or in the hammock. I do it when I'm driving my car, but I want you guys to focus on the road. But when I'm driving along and I'm looking at all these power wires, I'm like, wow, that's such a miracle. It's so unexpected because technically every single one of these little electrons over here, it exists in an electron shell, a shell of probability, because it's moving around so fast. We can't pin it down exactly where it is. We could just say there is a generalized field of probability where it is likely to be, but it's definitely a form of matter. And I, again, will emphasize it has some mass and it has some weight. So these are just probability fields. Probability fields are being harnessed to be able to carry something that is totally non-physical. So something that borders at the edge of our definition of even physical matter is being harnessed as a phenomenon to then carry a form of light information intelligence that is totally non-physical in our world. That's a miracle. Like, just consider about that. And now let's talk about how does this electricity propagate through as a wave through these molecules. Here's what does not happen. I want to grab a color here. What does not happen is that this one molecule of copper does not move at all. This electron does not move at all. So, this could be miles from the power station all the way over to the plug in my house. That could be very far away. The electricity travels many miles, but the actual matter that carries electricity doesn't travel at all. So if we use as the analogy to get your mind around this, let's say that this is the ocean. And over here, wait, let me just choose a better color because you can't really see that easily on your screen. All right. Over here is the shores of Japan. And over here are the shores of California in the United States. And then this represents the Pacific Ocean. All right. When you have a wave that propagates across the Pacific Ocean in water, the water molecules do not travel all the way from Japan to California. There is no big giant like migration of water where we're receiving all of that water over to us. The water is a medium through which waves and impulses travel. The water molecules actually move very little in terms of left to right. They mostly move up and down. So they might move up and down, many feet or hundreds of feet to carry the wave, but left to right, very, very little. And that is the same thing with the electrons that are carrying electricity. They move in order to carry the impulse, but in terms of the electrons moving, we would say, left to right, there really is only a small amount of drift. It might be a centimeter. The electrons over here might just move a centimeter in terms of their drifting through this process. But the impulse of electricity can move many, many miles. When the electricity gets through all these different apparatuses, and then it comes into either, one of these forms of light bulbs, what it then is doing is then being translated through these different formfulnesses into either the optical light or the optical light plus heat. So you have light that starts the power station, light that travels as an impulse, light that is exemplified in the mechanics of transferring that impulse along a wire. And then light emerges through its interactions with these apparatuses here. So the light bulbs become the portals through which light emerges, but they are not the origin of that light. The light is still information, and the information in terms of its original origin is always going to be the sun. Because where did that methane come from? I had to look it up. But methane came from cellulose that is ancient, that is something that decomposed, from millennia ago, and then became this gas. So it is like a derivative of it is derivative of cellulose, glucose. It is partially decomposed, and then it is in a gaseous form. And then or sometimes the power plant is created by coal that is burning, and that is similarly plant material that is solidified light. Solidified light that is ancient plant material, so it could be either coal or it could be gas. That is basically, I'm trying to say the origin is the sun. Now you guys are gonna be Troublemakers. I can tell, got a class full of troublemakers here. Because someone out there is thinking, well, what about nuclear power? Dun, dun, dun. Thank you for being a troublemaker. It is true that there are nuclear power plants, and you might receive electricity from nuclear power plants. It's totally different than combustion, and it totally does not come from cellulose or stored up glucose. So in terms of our analogies of light originating from the sun and then being emitted through these various different whatever circuitous circumstances, nuclear power doesn't fit very well into my sharing. So just sweep it under the carpet. Let's not talk about nuclear power. All right. Let's not talk about nuclear power. But you are correct that that is another origin of where light comes from and where light can be emitted from. Okay. So now let's talk about energy. Electricity as an impulse has no mass. So electrons have mass. Electricity has no mass. No mass means that it has no weight. And it means it is not experiencing space. You know, it's another thing that doesn't experience space. A beam of light. A beam of light and an electrical impulse does not experience space, but it does experience time. That means there is a certain amount of time that it takes for an impulse to start out here, move along here, and then end up here. And the photon itself, now I have to return to my notes. So wait, I'll return to my face, and then I'll return to my notes so that I can read this correctly. So I want to get it right. Okay. The photon is a time event that is spread out across space. I'm going to say it again. Photon is a time event that is spread out across space. The entire waveform pathway that is the journey of the photon should be defined as photon. The packet and the entire implied trajectory or narrative backstory into its identity or definition. So now I have to draw this for you. I did not prepare this before class. So let me just draw a quick, fast, pretty cool drawing for you here. Let's start off as usual. Here's the sun. Let me change, make my pen a little bit fatter. See it better. Here's a bunch of light. Now I'm drawing these as beams of light. But you have to know what is happening. I didn't draw that line. Okay, a ghost is here with us. Just ignore it or tell it that it's a ghost and it needs to move onward. And it should not be haunting the Zoom for eternity. Thank you. You may laugh. Okay, so I drew all of those radiating lines because what I want you to comprehend is that this is a radiating shell of energy, a sea of light. So if I draw as I commonly do, here is your little eyeball down here that is meant to represent the viewer. There's your eyeball and your little eyelashes. Somebody needs like mascara. These are very spindly eyelashes. Okay, good. One beam of light makes it to your eye, but that's not the only limitation of what the sun is emitting. It is emitting an enormous quotient of light, and you are only receiving a small portion of it. What the sun is emitting is actually a big giant waveform. And last time I scared you because I said if I did the drawing correctly, I would just color the entire screen with yellow. And you'd be like, that's a scary drawing. Stop. Don't worry. This is all light. And it would be overwhelming if you were exposed to 100% of the light that is being emitted from not only one sun star, but from all of the sun stars. But I draw this so that you can comprehend that this is a continuum. What you're looking at is, here, I'll say it for my notes. Photons are shown as a particle for convenience. So this would be if I were to draw here, well, I just want to find like a good color. We're going to make green a photon color, even though photons are not green, but I just want to make it, because I know some people are on their phone and can't see, it's very tiny. That green thing is meant to represent a photon. Photons are shown as a particle for convenience. It is actually a quantized package a little slice of the giant waveform pie or the ocean of waveforms. The photon is a ripple of interactivity within the larger fabric of space-time and consciousness and electromagnetic radiation. It is one thought form within a larger ocean of consciousness. So what I'm looking at when I scribble my lines over here, this is the ocean of consciousness. And it's not just emitted from one particular star, it's emitted from all of the stars that exist in reality. This is, for ease of talking about things, I'm showing it as one little dot and as a discrete portion of all of this, but please know that it is intimately connected to all of this. When this little dot, comes in here and enters into your eye, you're like, oh, look at that. I see a dot of light. But what I'm trying to say is that the journey of photon must include not only that moment when photon enters into your eye and stimulates your retina, it must include the entire narrative backstory going all the way to the sun of where that photon came from. This is actually photon. Photon is actually shaped like this. The whole entire journey that impulse of light has been on. It is this whole entire journey that, of course, that narrative story is not the same as all of these narrative stories because these are all different portions of light heading in different directions with different stories to them. This is what I mean when I say that photon is an impulse that is experiencing time. It is, let me read back my words so that I'm saying it exactly correctly. It is a time event spread out over space. The photon right here is a time event, and this is its pathway of being spread out across space. And if you went really, really deep, let's draw it for you. Wait, okay, if I would draw it like this. Like, let's say that we are now going to expand this level of the diagram into this little box where I'm now going to show you a big, giant, exaggerated photon. We could expand upward what photon looks like. This is the outer boundary of photon, but what you would see is every single journey of all photon everywhere spiraling backwards through time to the origin of time. That's what you would see. Every single photon contains the implied story and the implied trajectory of all light everywhere. Okay, you can scoop up your brains now and stick them back inside of your ears because you've just been liquefied. Your brains are on the floor. You're like, can't even comprehend what's going on, but I know this is deep stuff. So I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about how this is all consciousness. Everything where all the yellow squiggles are consciousness. It's all information. It's all an organized story. And then when you look around the world, you are just receiving a small slice of that organized story. Let me read a little bit more. Now, remember, you are singularity, and you contain a giant long trajectory comprised of trillions of implied trajectories of light that all converge together into this amazing moment, which is your physical body right now. So now let's do similarly, because you learn visually, you do. Let's expand outward and let's make this box the expansion that represents you. Wait, I'm gonna have to get blue, and I want to draw like a little like stick figure here. I'm a good artist. I can draw people that look like people. It's just for convenience. Okay, but let's say this, and let's now cover you with green dots, because these are all the photons that you are full of. This is, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? Like, did you have like scrambled eggs? Did you have toast? These are all of the photons that you contain from your breakfast and every breakfast that you have had for your whole entire life up to this moment. And of course, if you were to expand every single one of those green dots, it would expand to this drawing over here. And you would contain the journey and information of all light everywhere within every single one of those individuated packets of light that you have inside of you in the form of biophotons, optical light, and glucose. And you could think of every single one of these photons, of course, let's use a different color, I don't know, choose here, like choose this light green, as having an origin that goes back, of course, to the sun. So let's draw a million green little connector sticks is what I want to call them. A million green sticks that all come from their origin into you. And this is totally customized. Everybody has a different and unique recipe of the light that has come on its amazing journey and come to reside within you. So your body, again, is not just some dead, stupid molecular thing, a bunch of cellular goo and junk, like pumping out metabolites and having experiences. Like that is how science describes your body, like in a very reductionist way. I should say objective materialist science. Let me drink some juice here. That is not the complete definition of who and what you are. I'll read from my notes again. You are singularity, and you contain a giant long trajectory comprised of trillions of these are the implied trajectories of light that all converge together into this amazing moment, which is your physical body right now. I am so pleased because I'm telepathic with you guys, and I just tuned in and I just felt you leveling up in your consciousness and in your assessment, in your self-definition of who and what you are. You're like, oh, like I am full of light. Yes, you're full of light, and you're full of the implied trajectories of where that light has come from. Let me go back to my notes to make sure I'm not missing anything that's important. Okay, so wait. I said that already. Okay, but I'm going to reread it for you just so that, and I'm just to emphasize. Okay. Plasma has no mass. It hovers on the threshold between physical stuff and ephemeral energy. And it conducts electricity, which has no mass. All right. But a photon or a beam of light has no mass and is pure energy. Electricity is carried along by electrons in electron clouds, which do have mass. Okay. So electricity has no mass. No mass means it is experiencing no space, but it does experience time as an electrical ephemeral impulse. Plasma has mass, and it affects the fabric of space, time, and consciousness and creates gravity. Plasma conducts electricity, which has no mass, does not distort the fabric of space, time, but which carries information. And electricity propagates as a wave impulse through the crystalline structure of metallic wires. It moves slower than the speed of light. This is what I should emphasize too, but it still carries the data information that is re-emitted in the form of light coming out through your light bulbs. Okay, so let's talk about this. Why does electricity travel slower than the speed of light? And really the answer to that is, we'll go back to the whiteboard for just ease of being able to show this to you. No, wrong one. Please go back. This is the wrong one. That's not the one I wanted. Let's go to this one. This one. Get a color. Just get a color. Electricity travels slower than the speed of light because of this. No, make it bigger. I'm showing these two lines as kind of like boundaries that corral electricity. When electricity moves as an impulse, it doesn't just go in a straight line like this, even though it's not a very straight line. What it really does is it bounces kind of like this. Inside of the wire, it bounces off of the inner edges of the wire, and that adds the zigzag movement of the bouncing actually slows down its speed quite a lot. So it is moving slower than the speed of light in what it's doing. Okay. Now, now, now. Okay, but wait. We start a whole new whiteboard for this. Because, well, first I'll stop this so you can see my face. Because again, you learn from seeing. Okay. Can someone else jump into a moment of your past? Now we're talking about time. Can they fly in a metal rocket ship into the implied trajectory that is the time structure that is or was your life and that you traveled upon to get to this moment in the fabric of time and space? So hat tip to one of my wonderful students who is named Billy. We were having a conversation all about this several years ago when I was developing this curriculum, and Billy asked me this question. So this is where we're going to go through this presentation now. So first I'll give you my answer verbally, and let's draw it. The answer is no, that the light trajectory, the implied trajectory that you traveled on to get into this moment in the fabric of space-time is customized to you, bespoke. That's what they call it when you get one of those fancy suits made. Someone measures your shoulders and they measure your leg. They give you a bespoke garment. It is customized. You traveled on this particular pathway of light to get to where you are now in the fabric of time space. And the photon expanded in order to get to where it is now, like that loop of energy. And I'll draw it for you. In order to get to some place on one of those trajectories, what would be necessary is a type of embodiment. So now you're like, what? I can't understand anything. I'm sad and angry. Do not be sad and angry. Let me draw pictures for you, okay? Start with a whole fresh, shiny new whiteboard. So first, let's draw a sun star in the traditional model where you have the sun over here. Wait a second. In case you can't tell, I keep on getting annoyed because I want it to be fat so you can see it. Here's the sun, and then here is in linear drawings, light that is emitting off of the sun. So that means that this over here is some amount of space. Like here's many, many millions of miles of the light traveling outward away from the sun in your traditional viewpoint of the behavior of light and what light is doing. And now let's draw a metal spaceship. All right, here's a plain metal spaceship over here. It's a little UFO. And no, let's draw a rocket ship because let's just make it, here's like a nice pointy rocket ship. All right, with flames that stick out the bottom wing. That was the worst drawing ever. Okay. This is a rocket ship from NASA. There we go, much better. Or how about a giant ladder? Giant ladder, and here's the rungs of the ladder. In the traditional viewpoint of the behavior of what light is doing, it would be possible for us to somehow fly or build a giant ladder, and then we could go to this place here. We look at it as a place in the night sky that we could occupy or go to in some way. But I am saying that that is not a viable possibility. Giant X through it. No, that is not a viable possibility. So let's erase all this stuff. Let's say what is actually going on. Because what you're actually doing is, here's the singularity at the center of that sun, and then here is the narrative structure. And the narrative structure is not just a line, it actually has formfulness to it. So this is meant to represent a formful fabric of space-time, you know, like with some little cross-hatching across there, fabric of space and time, fabric of space and time. And these are curved surfaces, all right? So you're using your imagination. You're like, yep, Aurora, that's a perfect drawing. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, we're clearly, it's supposed to be like a ribbon, like with flatness to it. And this is the fabric of both space. Oh, wait, I should make it T for time, S for space. Do it. And then we'll make C for consciousness. That is the fabric of space, time, and consciousness. And it is, of course, the end result of the activity of this yellow photon here. So how about our previous model? Like, can we build a big giant ladder from your planet up to here and get over to here? And kind of climb up a big ladder like that, or fly in the rocket ship. I'm trying to draw this one kind of fast. It doesn't always work for me. Fly in a rocket ship. Be able to fly to this place over here. And the answer is no, you cannot do that. Cannot occupy those areas of the photon's journey, because that is the path or experience of that photon. So just as I drew for you, I know it was in green in the other screen, but here I am drawing that big, giant, exaggerated photon. And then this is the story that it contains. If you looked inside of it, heading all the way back in time, it would be the story of everything that brought that photon into that moment. And in order for you, can you build a ladder to get inside of a photon? Like, I'm trying to build a ladder. I'm trying to be ridiculous here. Like, can I build a ladder into a photon? You're like, no, Aurora, does that make sense? Of course it doesn't make sense. And photons are not a place. Cannot build a ladder to or fly a rocket ship to someplace that is not a place. It is a time event spread out across space, but it does contain a narrative structure. It contains the story of the photon. So it contains, think of it as history, like, let's draw it like this, like heading back, this is going into the past, like we're looking down into the past, and this is the photon a long time ago. And then even further, that's the photon even further back into the past. That's all of what is contained, like we're looking like through perspective into the past, that's all of what is contained in the photon. And you cannot fly there in a physical contraption. Let's talk about this, because really, when Billy asked the question, he asked from the perspective of a person. Like, if this is a person who lives in this moment right now, and then let's draw their arms, have to. Let's say that they, looking down the time tunnel or going back into the past, and here's them as a little person in the past. Okay? It's just meant to represent that they're far away in time. Can we go somewhere that is in this person's life journey, life trajectory? Can I go here like 50 years ago in your life? Can I go here 10 years ago in your life? Can I build a ladder to this area of time in your life? Can I fly my rocket ship into this area of time in your life? And the answer is no. I cannot do that, and that doesn't make sense. In fact, if I wanted to become a part of you and to access this moment in your trajectory that brought you to the moment now, what would happen is you would have to eat me. So here I am drawing a mouth. Ooh, this person with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. You would have to eat me. If you ate me and I became a part of your body form here, because remember, I just drew for you what it looks like, all of those implied trajectories of every single aspect of your breakfast that has ever been eaten, that's inside of you. I'm not saying this very well, but I hope it's getting across. You contain the light of every organism that you have ever consumed. Let's draw, here's a leaf over here. And that leaf, of course, has light in it that went on its journey. I'm making little yellow dots. I don't know if you can see them on your screen, but that contains light. And when you eat that leaf, the light goes inside of you. And these are the trajectories of the implied trajectories of all of the tomatoes, all of the salads, all of the hamburgers. You're like, hamburgers, that's not a plant. Yeah, but it's a cow that ate a bunch of plants and then you ate it. You indirectly consumed an enormous amount of light. And then what happened is that light became quantum entangled with you. It is a part of you. So you didn't just, let's say, eat a cow and then some of its muscle fibers became and proteins became a part of your muscle fibers and proteins. Although that happened, what also happened was that consciousness light that is cow came inside of you and became quantum entangled with you, and then became a part of your implied trajectory going all the way back. Because remember, I drew for you in that other whiteboard all of the light coming off of the sun and how there's an implied trajectory here before one little photon reaches your eye. But really, when we're talking about the photon as a time event stretched across space, the photon or the light is actually that whole entire path. When you eat something and it becomes a part of you, it actually becomes a part of the whole entire path of you. It doesn't just become a part of you in this moment now. It becomes a part of your whole entire implied trajectory. And then in becoming a part of that person, it would be able to access these different moments or life events that are part of the implied structure of your whole entire life. So now we're talking about getting on the path of light. What would it be necessary to be a part of the pathway of a photon? This fabric of space-time here where I'm scribbling is the pathway of a photon. Its life story, its life trajectory. We actually cannot fly a clank clank metal spaceship here, just like I cannot build a ladder or fly a clank clank metal spaceship here. How do I get there? How do I become a part of it? Well, in order to answer the question here, it was to be eaten. I must jump into somebody's mouth. To be eaten, which is a ridiculous concept when you're like, a human being will eat me and then it'll become a part of their life. I'm like, yes. The photon has to eat you. And then you can become a part of its implied trajectory. You're like, that's it, Aurora. I can't take it. How does a photon eat me? This doesn't make sense. It doesn't have a mouth. Continue. When I talked about this last week in class, I'm going to go over it a lot more now. When a photon is going along at light speed and it encounters you, there are several different things that can happen. So first, I'm going to draw a big, giant, exaggerated head so that we can really show like your eyeball over here, and your other eyeball over here, and then here's you. As you think like photons are tiny and I'm big, and how can a photon eat me? Blah, blah. It's not about size. So the photon is moving at light speed. And when it comes to you, and you can either interact with it and you can either remain inert. That means you don't move at all. The photon is moving super fast at light speed and it comes and interacts with you and you are physical matter that is not moving at light speed. One of the options is you can just stand there and not move at all. And the photon will continue moving at light speed, right? Another option is that the photon will pick you up and carry you and make you start to move faster. So now let's show this option. Here's the photon over here. And let's show it kind of like picking up a little version of you and making you start to move. Or like the way I joke, like a fireman carries, pick somebody up, fireman's carry, pick someone up and throw them over your shoulder and carry them like a sack of potatoes. You're passive, not doing anything, no effort on your part, but the forcefulness of the consciousness of the photon lifts you up and carries you through time. And then the third option would be if you voluntarily accelerated. And that would be if you started to run along with time. And that is what it is to be on the path of light. If I erase this, the photon doesn't move past you, doesn't lift you up and carry you like a sack of potatoes. It activates you. This energy starts to make you move faster. And then as photon continues to move at light speed, I'm just going to use this blue line to represent you, you also move at light speed. And the analogy for that would be if you were running a race and the photon is running at 5 miles an hour and you're right next to it. and you're also running at 5 miles per hour, you are accelerated, or whatever. A car is at 55 miles an hour, and there's another car next to it at 55 miles an hour. And when I talked about this in class last week, I talked about, where's my sculpture? It's never where I need it to be. Just so that you know, it's like the everything is okay alarm. As long as the sculpture is not where it needs to be, you know, everything is okay. This central convergence point here is singularity, and it represents the totality of speed, overlappingness of everything, energy, and consciousness. And when you are residing at that moment, or experiencing that ultimate fast motion of time and overlappingness of all probabilities and possibilities, you're at infinity, moving at infinite speed, only surrounded by other things that are also at infinity and moving at infinite speed. And when you are in that feeling state, modality, whatever, you are not comparing yourself in context to anything else that is in existence. In fact, there is nothing around you that is not moving at infinity speed. And to speak in positives, everything around you is moving infinitely fast, is infinitely hot, and is containing infinity. So when I talk about being on the path of light, you are changing your perspective from being matter, who is separate from light, and looking at, as I described in the first class, like the road that runs past my house. The cars go fast next to my house, but they are whizzing past, whiz, 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 and I'm just standing here watching them. This is mostly how humans have comprehended and experienced light in your matter formfulness that you're in right now. But ascension is the acceleration of your self state and the matter of your being to re-attain light speed plus, which is infinity speed. And when you are on the path of light, you are literally standing in the middle of the road. Like, this makes me feel uncomfortable. The trucks will run me over. I know. But in this case, the trucks are photons and you want them to run you over. You want them to go directly into you. As I talked about, that is information. They're not running into you like a Mack truck. They are flowing into you as information. And so now when I talk about the three things that light can do when you interact with it, you can be a solid, opaque object that is not moving at light speed, and light information can come to you. You can either not receive that information, which means like you don't budge. You don't, I want to say you don't do SHIT. You don't do anything. Nothing happens. The information has no impact on you. Or another thing that can happen is information can flow to you and it can lift you up and carry you like a fireman. You are passive, but it makes you move through time. Or you can become energized and responsive, which is when information comes to you, you internalize it, and it actually accelerates you. This is what ascension is. This is why I'm teaching you about the path of light, that these are more than just mere abstractions or celebrations of like the amazing miracle of the world that we find ourselves within. It's that the intention for me to share all this with you is to bring you on a consciousness journey so that you are prepared and you're already accelerating. I am bringing light to you. I got my light directly from the sun and the stars. I sat in my lawn chair 2 years ago and I looked up at the stars and I got these ideas. And of course, I translated them into phonemes and drawings. And here I am coming to you through the artificial electricity transmitting form of light, but I'm still sending light information to you. And it can either have no impact on you, like, duh, here, drool is coming out, duh, I'm dumb. I know, you're not dumb. You guys are getting accelerated by this. You are internalizing this just like if you ate a chicken sandwich, and it's becoming a part of your muscles. Your incorporating it into the structure of who and what you are. That's what your light body is. Your light body is a structure of ideas, of premises, of contexts, of metacognitive comprehensions of the world, as well as individual points of data, as well as networks and systems for being able to share and codify that data. That's what your light body is. Because when I say light body, a lot of people think like a glowing ghost, like Casper the Friend, the friendly ghost, and you're kind of like glowing. And it is that. You are that. Your glowing light body is more than just like a light bulb or whatever, a night light. It is a container and a representation of abstract cosmic truth. So I am bringing to you abstract cosmic truth that I got from the sun and the stars. And when it flows to you and you internalize it, you accelerate internally. And you begin to shift your perspective from being external, away from light, and partitioned or discrete from light, to recognizing that light is a flowing continuum from light energy through photosynthesis into matter, and then from matter back into light. And you recognize that you're a part of that flow and that continuum, and you're already getting faster. And then at a certain point, you realign your perspective to not be apart from the sun and the stars or apart from light, watching it whiz past you, but instead you are directly in the path of light, and it is beaming out of the sun and the stars as the origin point of light emitting. And it is coming into you, and you have these long, unbroken narrative structures that connect you to the sun and the stars, and you become accelerated, and you become moving at the same rate as the light that is moving in all of these other places. And then there is nothing around you that is not moving that fast. There is only everything around you that is moving that fast. So first I had to do the words. Words are hard, but I hope you got it. But I sent the mind pictures. Now let's do the pictures. So let's do, here is, I'm going to draw it in the traditional way, as if these are all spread out. But every single one of these, don't do big fat lines. Fat lines, these are meant to be all the different stars that are in the sky, right? Star, 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 including our own sun. And then let's draw you as a blue person. All right. And right now you're a blue person, and you're matter, and you're not that fast, and you're not made of light. But because I know I'm drawing the traditional linear drawing. The light comes from the sun and the stars, and it goes to you, and it goes to you. But as you get faster and faster and faster, you are accelerating until you become one with all of this light that is flowing in the world. You are also flowing at that same rate. Let's include this little guy. It's all after the cold. And then what you were perceiving as the emptiness between stars, the vast reaches of space where I'm scribbling in black, none of this exists. None of this exists. Nothing that is moving slower than light exists. All that exists is everything that is moving at light speed and at infinity speed. And then what the drawing looks like is more like this. Here's, of course, one star, but it's many, many stars, and they're all on top of each other. So we're just going to make a million red lines all on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other. And then this is you overlapping with all of those sun stars. You're like, wait, my legs are dangling. I'm going to be cold. It's just a drawing. And then here's the light. Here's the light. That is you on the path of light. That is you on the path of light, because you're not like, this would be from your perspective. You're looking at, let's just get a color, any color. This is a car driving down the road, and it's driving along like this, and you're watching it from the side of the road. But when you stand in the middle of the road, that light goes directly into your eye. You're not seeing it like a big long line that goes to the side. You see it as one dot. You see it as one dot here. I'm just going to draw a dot over here. This dot over here, of course, represents, we would draw it with perspective as going into the distance, going into infinity. Here's infinity. Here's the horizon. Off into the distance in horizon. That drawing does not look like infinity at all. Wait, let's draw it like this. That's a photon. This is the road of forever going off into the distance. Here's the horizon. And then let's draw the sun. This is how you guys are used to seeing the world through optical light. Here's the sun. And it's all across the horizon and parallel lines meet at infinity. And then here's the photon. And the photon, of course, goes all the way back to the sun. And then here's you. And it jumps inside of your eye. You're over here and it jumps inside of your eye. But you're not standing apart from this whole entire beautiful line of light. It's a part of you. You're looking down the time tunnel, and all that you see is this one dot. And that photon represents this whole entire network of all of this and all of this too. Everything it's ever been, everything it's ever done, and all information and all light everywhere. That is what it is to be on the path of light. So I have a little bit more to share. I have like another half hour before we wrap up our class. All right. And I want to make sure that I get to all of your questions. So before I share a little bit more, let me get to your questions. Wait, and let me also drink some of my wonderful juice here. Thank you. Okay, Chris says, as I sun gaze in mornings, I can see the pulsing waves coming off. Then I see all these cells or atoms that appear to have 7 shells. In the middle is all the colors. I am sensing that this is the flying rainbowing the center. This morning, it appears to be a hexagram in the nucleus area. Can you give some clarity what is happening between each shell? Are all the colors too? Are these atoms I am sensing? Any other information to share? Yes. So if you saw the solar disk and then a hexagon, you might have been looking at some form of technology or the sun simulator. So you guys have to know right now that there are 2 light sources that are in the sky. This is path of light where everything's cool and awesome, and I'm totally in denial about all the things that are not cool and awesome in the world. There are a lot of things right now that are not cool and awesome in the world, one of which is a sun simulator or an artificial emitter of light in the sky that is not a sun or a star. And it is more similar to an LED light bulb that is not even an emitter of secondary or tertiary light, but is an emitter of false light. So the hexagonal nature of what you saw is something artificial that is not giving you truthful information back to the origins of time. Just like if I were to do sun gazing with my light bulb, I would not receive profound information. It is not a substitution at all. So in the wintertime, when there's not a lot of sunlight, it is not the same for me to sit and sun gaze at my light bulb. You know what I'll get in terms of information from my light bulb? Very little. Just like I told you, a fluorescent light emits a certain amount of frequencies, but not all of them. It's not very flattering to the skin tone, right? It emits 0 consciousness. Can't sun gaze with a light bulb. When you sun gaze, you are having a rapport and a whole conversation, a whole back and forth, a sharing between yourself as formfulness and consciousness and the ball of plasma that is the sun as formfulness and consciousness. You're having an intelligent conversation, just like it's alive. And when I talk with my plant that is here on my little plant stand behind the screen, or to talk with a tree, I'm having an intelligent conversation and a sharing of information, which is light. But when I interact with the light bulb, I am not having an intelligent conversation. I'm receiving radiation and I'm receiving optical light, but I'm not receiving cognitive awareness. So there is a nefarious agenda that is part of the larger crappiness of what's going on this planet. That is the sun simulator, something that is emitting light from the sky, but does not emit consciousness. And it is meant to wash out or overwhelm or supersede, be louder than and more annoying than the actual sun and the actual information of the sun, which is there. So key points are that the real sun does still exist. It is still there. Just like if you had a person who is a good singer and they're singing, but then someone else is playing like heavy metal, and then someone else is running a power saw, and then there's lots of other whatever noises and traffic and confusion. And you're like, is that person still there? Can I even hear them? It's like you can't hear them, but they're still there. Then there's all of this nonsense that is going on top of their voice. Literally what is happening with us and the sun. The sun is a beautiful opera singer that emits like the most amazing artistic expressions. And in the first several decades that I was here as Aurora, I'm like doing my sun gazing, hearing the beautiful voice of the sun and receiving all of its information. And literally when they turned on the millimeter wave that is said to be for telecommunications in this planetary structure about 2020 or so, my ability to hear the sun nosedived. Not because I'm not good. Luckily, I know I'm good at what I do, but because so many other competing signals started to be louder than the true sun. But it is possible to sun gaze and still connect to the true sun. You need to send out your mind or the tendril of your mind to the true sun and supersede or neutralize or negate the artificial sun. So when I encourage people to do sun gazing, I tell you, you do not have to sun gaze with your eyes open. You can close your eyelids and still receive the cognitive energy of the sun. And what you're really doing is you're receiving it in your pineal gland or your mind or your eye of time. So even a person without sight, like a blind person, a non-sighted person, can sun gaze, because it is not merely about optical light, it is about consciousness. So a person who does not have activated eyes that cannot see optically can still send out their mind to the consciousness ball of energy that is the sun and receive energy from that ball of consciousness. But you have to filter out the untruthful signals. In times when my sun gazing has been very strong and in a very pristine environment, I know that I am connecting with the sun effectively. When I see concentric rings that are rainbow rings, I have a drawing, but I just don't want to take the time in class to be able to search through my many files to be able to pull it up and find it, but I've used it in class many times. The sun is here, then there is violet, blue, green, yellow, orange, and then red at the outside. And that's how you know you're on target. So you might be like sun gazing, sun gazing, sun gazing, you're connecting, you're ingesting the light. And then all of a sudden for me, there's like a click, and then I see it. And my internal apparatus is perfectly aligned with the sun. And then I see these concentric rings. And sometimes I would even see like a bridge that connects almost in like a figure 8 motion, the sun to me, either to my heart or to the center of my mind. But I haven't seen that in a very long time. There's been so much technological interference, it is difficult for me to be able to see that. And guys, I'm good at what I do, and I am the original lasagna. I want to say original gangster, but that's not right. OG, OL, original lasagna. I'm original lasagna, and I know that I can do this jumping to be able to connect the sun, and still it is sometimes very difficult for me to do that. So don't ever be discouraged. Just please always try your hardest. And please know that this sun gazing and lasagnaing is not only with your optical equipment or the equipment up here, it is actually with every cell of your body. We're really talking about the nucleus of every cell of your body, making that hyperspace leap to connect directly with the sun and all light everywhere and receive the nourishment and information that comes from that energy world. Because like you're like, well, what if they, put blindfolds on your eyes, or what if they disempowered your pineal gland? I'm like, this is what's going on right now. Okay. Like there's lots of things that are happening in each person's biology and in the environment that are assaults. They're antichrist, technological assaults on the functioning of the pineal gland. But I want you to know you can still tune in with the sun. You can still tune in with the world of pure light. You can get your nourishment and your inspiration in spite of their efforts to try to make it harder for food and energy to come in through the traditional pathways. So yes, you can always, so I haven't spoken enough about this, but there is light in structured water. The structured water in your physical body, the molecular configuration of the water molecules themselves, even in a liquid form, can be considered crystalline. It's not ice. The blood does not turn to ice. Your blood becomes hyper organized in its fluid dynamics. And there is light in the molecular context, how the angles are formed in the formation of how the water is flowing in a fluid state. That contains light. And that highly organized water, it is called easy water. You're like, the easy bake oven, what are we talking about here? Exclusion zone. Easy stands for exclusion zone. If you guys want some self-education, please look at the work of Dr. Pollack, Pollack. He did a TED Talk years ago that got heavily suppressed. And this was before TED Talk got all like diluted and New World Order and like, crapped upon and diminished. Because it really used to be an opportunity for wonderful visionary thinkers to amplify their voice and share what they are. He's a great visionary thinker. So the very basic mechanics of it are, he was doing research into making super purified water. And he learned about this formfulness of the liquid state of water that is called the fourth phase of water. And he called it exclusion zone because it is a place where particles are excluded from because the construction of the water molecules becomes so highly organized that it cannot tolerate particles, which is just like when you have polluted water and you freeze it, like if you stick it in your freezer, you'll notice the particles migrate to the outside of the ice cube, but the inside of the ice cube is pure water because as it organizes itself into the crystalline structure, the particles have to migrate to the outside. So the easy exclusion zone water is super purified. It doesn't contain particles. And when our bodies are in a state of total health, it is the water that is in the nuclei of our cells, surrounding and cushioning the activities of our DNA as we wildly dance our DNA. It's in your mitochondria as an end result of the processes that involve the translation of glucose light into ATP and energy, which is also light. And it is also in the lining of your veins and arteries in your blood supply when the blood is flowing through. If this is a cross section of the tube of your circulatory system, the easy water is in around this area, right? Lining the epithelial cells. And that easy water and in your bloodstream, it transmits electricity, which is also light. So your blood becomes charged. And I don't remember which one is which, but either your veins or your arteries, one becomes positive and one becomes negative in electrical charge. And that this makes it possible for the blood to flow through your body in a much more efficient state than if it were merely being mechanically pumped around your body. The easy water contains light. It's intelligent, it's information water. And when it's in your blood supply, it helps your blood to carry electricity, which is light information. And it literally means you are more intelligent. You're carrying more light. So what I'm teaching you here with Path of Light and what I do in a lot of my personal session work, so I have, have my crystals, and the work that I do with people is bringing forward dormancies and clearing inhibitions from the full expression of light in the physical anatomy and non-physical anatomy of your body. So your physical body does have anatomy that you can see under a microscope or with your eyeballs. That is part of your light body. You know what that is? I already said to you, your circulatory system and your properly charged blood, your mitochondria and the water that's around your mitochondria. Your DNA is absolutely a connection to the world of light and the water that is surrounding it, as well as, of course, your neurology contains light as neurological impulses. And your skin is absolutely an architecture of light, an organ of light, including the sebaceous glands. These are really important. Your teeth are also a part of your light body. Your immune system is part of your light body. Because it's part of your information body. So again, your light body is not just a glowing Casper the Ghost version of what your physical body looks like. Your light body, oh, I forgot to tell you, your microtubuli. Your microtubuli and your collagen and your tendons that hold together all of your muscles and your skin. These are microfibers inside of your body that transmit biophotons, which are literal light, that are measurable and perceived by science, but they're not perceived by your eyesight because they're not optical. So biophotons are like your chi, your life force, your prana, your essence. It's what makes you be alive and healthy, as opposed to like limp and dead or inert and dead. So biophotons are transmitted through, it is called the microtubuli. And you can do some good research on this as well, or tubulin. And these are tiny structures that are inside of the cell that give the cell formfulness, but that also transmit biophotons, which means they send information around the light, I want to say the light, around the body at faster than light speed. So faster than light speed in my body, what Aurora? Science says this is not possible, but it is possible. So science tells you that in order for light to travel around your body, it goes from your brain to your big toe, and then from your big toe back to your brain. And it takes a moment for that impulse to happen. And a lot can happen, in that slowed down moment. A lot of information can be lost. But when you have a critical injury, or if you have something like a bee stings you here on your shoulder, but it does not take any amount of time for that impulse to get all the way around the whole entire body and bring the critical information. Something is happening. Jump into action now, otherwise you're going to die. And because what happens is there's an immediate histamine response around your whole entire body. Everybody gets the message right away. And that's because the light is transmitted instantaneously to every cell of your body. So there's some good doctors that are doing some work, mostly in Germany and other places that are more advanced than the United States, in recognizing that, like, if you can treat some conditions using pure light. And if I shine a red light or a blue light, like cold laser, onto my shoulder here, it takes zero amount of time for that light to be transmitted throughout my whole entire body. So this is very subtle medicine. It is not materialistic. It is very much in subtleties, recognizing the subtleties of your body and your light body and your frequency body. So it's different than the intellectual limitations of a person who thinks like the only way to solve the problems in the body is either to cut the body open or to create molecular pharmaceuticals that affect your biochemistry. This is about putting information into your body that is healing information that then changes and fine-tunes your whole entire body structure. Advanced ancient cultures knew about this, like pre-pharaonic Egypt knew about this. Many actual ancient, you would call them Stone Age, but they're not Stone Age, like hunter-gatherers. They were civilized people that created edifices that you might get inside of, like a resonant chamber. And then either a person would sing, or there might be some instrumentation that creates frequencies. That is light. Talked about that already. It's not optical light, but it's frequency information, and that frequency information will be transmitted to your cells. Yeah. You guys live in a world right now that is full of frequency doo-doo. It is the opposite of that, where you're being completely inundated at all times with bad stuff. That's not only just like random frequencies, but that's frequencies that literally carry the information of disease. That's what false light is. It's not just random distracting crapola. That would be bad enough, but it is an actual recipe for disease that is being beamed through false light into our world. So again, path of light, I try to focus only on the positives, but I have to speak about this in our Q&A. Very, very distressing. We don't want to be exposed to this corrosive propaganda is what I call it. And it's what I clear it out in the sessions that I do. Because although it might be invisible to your eye, it's radiation, comes from the cell phone towers or whatever. It is not visible to your eye, but it leaves a lasting residue in the body. So a waveform flows through the body. The waveform is false light information. The false light information comes inside of your true body of true information, and it leaves a bunch of doo-doos. And that is not okay. It leaves a bunch of propaganda and lies in its wake. And what I do is a lot of clearing that out, but with neutralization frequencies and then the putting in correct information. Princess Cheeky has awoken from her nap. Princess Cheeky needs a bribe. First, let's hug. Come over here. Don't worry, guys. We're going to stay serious. We're going to have more serious Q&A. Oh, you can see I got this for free from someone in my neighborhood. I'm so excited. Now I'm bounced, and I took this on while I bounce. But let's hug Cheeky. Everybody loves you, Cheeky. Everybody in class loves you. And I have a bribe prepared. Cheeky's on a diet, however. I wish her well. Cheeky's on a diet. Here's fruits. Here. Here's your food, baby. I have them all ready for you. There's foods, and there's even special tips. Okay. Because I know my kid. All right. So thank you for that brief, lighthearted interlude, especially when we're talking about bad stuff. But yes, false light poops and doo-doos that are inundating our world. And they talk to the cells of the body, just like if you read the newspaper in the morning and the newspaper says, everything is bad, jump out a window, abandon hope. And you're like, put down the newspaper. But it's too late because the light went inside of you. Light comes from the printed word. And I'll talk about that a little bit as I get through some of my questions too. But let's talk about different, this is actually in the recorded whiteboards, but I didn't make it part of this presentation because I had to streamline a little bit. So I didn't want to totally overwhelm you and I wanted to hit the highlights. But I have a really nice presentation. It's the final whiteboard that is about the light that's contained within a book or a computer floppy disk, or the oral traditions and the light that are contained within a person, and what happens to that. Well, I'll just talk about it right now, and then I'll go into more questions. Because you're like, wait, we're interested. Don't just tease me. Okay, so light goes on its journey in the traditional linear model. The light is emitted from the star and it goes off, and it's going all across space. It's going across space at the speed of light. And then what happens? Eventually, there's the entropic heat death of the cosmos. There's no more planetary nebula. There's no more stars that can be born. Stars are light factories or emitters of light. All of your emitters of light poop out. They become black holes. There's no more new factories that are made. There's no more ingredients for new factories. It means there's a limited amount of light that can be emitted. And at a certain point, you reach that limit. And then at a certain point, there's no more emitters. There's no more factories producing. There's just the backlog of what they have already produced. And what are black holes? Black holes are the complement to the expansion, expression, outwardness of what stars are doing during their life. It is a compression, drawing inward journey, in fullness. That's not a word, but complementary journey in the opposite direction of consciousness going internally as opposed to expanding outward. And when the consciousness of a star goes on that inner journey at that level of its evolution, it receives back all of its light. All of the photons that have been sent on their journey return to the star with information, and that is part of the star's journey of what it is doing as consciousness. But what if you send out light as a star? The light's going over here, it's over here, and this star turns into a black hole. And this light can't get all the way back to its black hole over here. What's going to happen? Well, it can go to a different black hole. It will go somewhere, but that's like not going home to its own body. That's like going to someone else's body in order to return and be resolved. At a certain point, the entropic heat death of this universe is one timeline, not the entire cosmos, but all of the stars cannot be manufactured anymore. Everything turns into black holes. All light exits this world. That includes all heat and all electricity and anything that animates matter and makes matter bounce off of each other. All of that exits this world. This world, when I say entropic heat death, that means there is no more heat. There is no more heat to sustain biological processes that can sustain life. Everything becomes frozen. Light is not here, so oxygen is frozen. Water is frozen. All matter is frozen. And then everything becomes what I showed in the diagram all the way to the left of your screen. The Bose-Einstein condensate, the super dense overlapping of all of these frozen atoms that have no more heat intelligence and no more dance inside of them. And they all overlap and create a form of unity consciousness, but it is unity consciousness at the end of the spectrum where there is non-being. So I told you already about the super fast bullet train of infinity. That's where we're going. We're accelerating. You're on the path of light. You're getting super fast. One day you're going to be so super fast, you're going to be at infinity, along with everyone and everything else that is also at infinity. There will be some stuff that is not moving at an infinite speed at infinity. All of that stuff will be super dense, overlapping, moving at zero speed, exhibiting 0 degrees of heat, and it will not be moving through time. I already told you today that photon is a discrete package of a waveform presence that is an experience of time spread out across space. When you remove all heat from matter and you create the entropic heat death of the cosmic infrastructure, what you end up having is matter formfulness that is not experiencing time. It is not spread out across time. It is space that does not experience time. What does that mean? It means it's not moving through time. I'm moving through time. You guys can see me. I'm not only moving on a treadmill, I'm moving through time. Like it was 350, now it's 351. I moved through time. Look at me. I just jumped through time. You guys are also time travelers. We are moving through time. And in fact, we're moving at the same rate. So to us, there's no contextual relevance. We don't even feel like we're moving through time. We're like, yep, we're just doing our thing. But if we were able to compare ourselves to something that is not moving through time, what would it look like? It would look like it pops out of existence. Like if this is my pen and it's here and it's moving through time with me. That's how come it's still here. Like this is my pen from last week. It moved through time with me and now it's here this week. But if this pen didn't move through time and it became a Bose-Einstein condensate, you know what would happen? It wouldn't be here now. It would be not here in the moment. It would not exist in this moment of time. So the stuff that does not accelerate and is not on the path of light ceases to exist in time. That is how, when you are at the central convergence point of everythingness, you are experiencing only everythingness that is moving through time at infinite speed. The only other option is the non-experience of stuff that is not moving at infinity speed. It is moving at 0 speed, and that means it is not experiencing time. It pops out of existence. And that is the end of the story, or the end of the journey for matter, which is, of course, solidified light, when all light leaves that matter. When all light evacuates and is no longer here in order to animate the world of matter, matter does not experience time any longer. So what happens? So if you are a star and you emit some light, that light has to go somewhere. It's not going to stay here in this formfulness of the universe for forever. Light is defined by its flowingness and its flowing state. It must continue to move. It can't just be stuck. So this is when I get to the whiteboard that is about light that is in the form of some storage. Like we're familiar, of course, if I had a log, I'd pick up a log. This is a piece of wood. It's a bunch of stored up light through photosynthesis, and we can make fire and we can emit that light. How about a book? Do I have a book? I have very few books. Pick up a book. How about this? You're like, you can burn a book. I know they have many times, but it contains light in a different way. Alphanumeric symbols. Alphanumerics contain light, which is information, just like my sound movements of my mouth contain information. Sound is light. Alphanumerics is light. And when you write a book, the light or information that you are putting into the book is light that is paused on its journey. When you, as the reader, then take that book and open it up, it could be hundreds of years or thousands of years from the person who originally wrote that book and put light onto those pages. Then you decode those alphanumerics and the light comes into you. What if nobody ever read the book? What would happen to that light? It can't just be stuck for forever. The answer is it would eventually either return to the star that emitted it or go home through the portal of a black hole of another star. And that includes a computer disk hard drive. How about a crystal? You know, guys, I don't have a lot of books in my house, but I do have crystals. This crystal holds information. This is actually a really unusual specimen. It is a Herkimer crystal that I got years ago back when I lived in Woodstock. And I've carried it with me through many different life experiences. And it has met many, many people. So many people have touched it and held it. I used to call it my cell phone to the universe, and put their imprint of who they are onto this crystal. This crystal contains a beautiful amount of information, but that is light that is paused on its journey and it is stored in this crystal. What will happen to that light? That light will either return to the sun or the stars or return to a black hole. And remember that the journey of return, which is when the ballooning infrastructure of the fabric of space-time contracts down, is the cognitive event of sending information back to the sun. So when you read a book or receive energy information from a crystal, and you're like, I'm in this moment now, reading this book and getting this information, you are sending that event to the sun and the stars because you're live streaming. And you're like, the light came from the sun and the stars. It went into this other person over here. They wrote this book 100 years ago. Then nobody read it. Then I picked up this book and I read it. The light was paused for 100 years now. I read that light. And then in this moment now, I transfer that event of me receiving that light back to the sun, and the light goes back to the sun. But if there's no interactivity with that book, what if it decomposes in a bog somewhere? Or what if it does whatever, desiccates in a cave somewhere? Or what if somebody burns it up or whatever? Well, if it is stored and is not immolated, then the light would eventually return to the sun, but not through a cognitive event. If it was combusted, what would happen? The light would be liberated in the form of combustion, but that would really be more molecular light and not really the cognitive light of your experience. Now let's talk about human beings, because there are many times when light is transmitted only through the oral tradition or direct mentorship. And this is what a lot of the cultures of Asia and what is known as the East from the perspective of the United States, it's like India, Asia, China, Japan, and also there's some with the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. Direct transmission of information from gurus or teachers and mentors to their disciples without writing things in a book, okay? So that means that the person who is the teacher contains a lot of light information, and they are there to directly transfer that light either through their mouth parts or through dance or through their personal frequency vibration to the other people around them. But a lot of light information remains in the person. What happens when you die? What happens to the light that is contained within you? Well, in the circumstance that I'm talking about, when you're like a master and you have disciples, and this is of course like I know I'm teaching. This is not every single situation, but just for the ease of talking about this, I can't even get the words out. When a person like that dies, the information and the light that they contain, some of it flows back directly to the sun and the stars, but some of it flows to the people who carry on their teachings. This is what I'm trying to say. Light is defined by its flow, and light that is stopped or sequestered or paused really begins to be defined as something other than light. We interpret it as matter, but it does always accelerate back to light. So when some of these teachers or gurus would die, they would be cremated. Cremation is the instantaneous transference of your body back into a form of light. And of course, this is nothing to do with people that have attainment, like ascension experience. Like there's lots of beautiful stuff about people that have achieved their rainbow body and they turn directly back into a form of light without the intervening interim of mortality experience or either decomposition or combustion. And decomposition is closer to cellular respiration or oxidation, in that it includes the adding of an oxygen molecule for the liberation of the light that was stored in that body, but is not the same as a release of optical light and infrared heat. When you cremate someone, it's a release of optical light and infrared heat. And traditionally, the students or disciples would be there at the cremation of their guru or their teacher. And the light that's in that person would then be received through the witnessing of that event, the light that would go into their disciples' eyes, the heat that they would feel coming off of them, and then, of course, the ephemeral nature of, the abstract nature of the light that they're emitting. Again, I'm glossing over or really giving a simplified version of what I have in that more complex whiteboard, but I wanted to talk about kind of like the end, death, eventualities, and what happens with light, because light, it doesn't ever really stop on its journey. It continues onward. And that is also a big part of what I'm here teaching you as you attain ascension and as you re-attain light speed. You really recognize that the definition of your journey is, the quality of your journey is defined by its continuous nature. Keeping moving, and never really stopping. So, okay, as I've been talking about that, many more questions have come up. So now let me get to all these questions. Aurelia says, luckily I can feel color tone as well as see it. Beautiful synesthesia. Pleased to hear that. Very good. Melissa says, electricity is the excitement of atoms versus the travel of atoms. And the excited atoms also create an excited field. When speaking of a copper wire, let's see. The excitation level of the copper that carries an impulse doesn't change. In fluorescent lighting, the excitation levels of atoms does change. So I drew that for you. You have the nucleus, then you have the first electron shell, then you have the second electron shell. And in a fluorescent light, those atoms are stimulated so that the electrons go into the higher energy state shell. And when they go into their lower energy state shell, that is when they are releasing light in the form of a photon. So in fluorescent lighting, yes, Melissa, what you're saying is more accurate. The excitation of the atoms is directly related to their emission of light and photons. But in terms of electricity being carried by, let's say, a copper wire, the copper atoms do not actually do that thing where they become more excited and you have a jumping of electrons between different levels of excitation or different electron shells, the electrons actually stay in their present level of their shell, and they are able to transmit the impulse from one atom to the next atom. So more like a bucket brigade, like imagine my cup is light comes to me, I take the cup and then I send it over to the next guy. But I don't necessarily like jump up 10 feet and then jump back down 10 feet. And then that's how I send out the information. So more like a chain. That's why I said a bucket brigade, a chain that carries that impulse along. But very beautiful question. Thank you for that. Michael S. says, sometimes I see a sun in my meditations, but sort of lower than my viewpoint. Is this the yellow ray chakra or something else? It is difficult for me to tell what you are seeing in your meditation. So it's hard for me to answer that. So I'm certainly trying to do my best, but I would say I need more information, maybe being quantum entangled inside of your body before I can tell what you're actually seeing. I don't know. And go on to say, in the novel, Fourth Uncle in the Mountain. Okay, it sounds cool. The uncle in the mountain tells his student to not pay attention to it, the sun inside. So I don't actually chase. But it is a cool phenomenon. Curious as to what it actually is. Thank you kindly. Okay, so I don't know about that teaching about the uncle in the mountain, but I will tell you, I think it is positive to connect to the sun that is internal. I haven't spoken about it enough in my teachings, but in sun gazing and in ascension and being on the path of light, your final attainment is to recognize that there is no space between you and the sun. You're receiving, like initially, you're sun gazing with something that feels external to you, and you're receiving light transmitted in what seems like from far away. But at a certain point, you are at light speed, and the sun is literally inside of your own body. And it is at the anatomical place where the top of your spine kind of sits, your skull sits on the top of your spine. It's like not necessarily your pineal gland, but kind of the epicenter of your brain. And your pineal gland feeds off of this inner sun. And when you are at that level of attainment, you don't have to eat physical food anymore. You have, like what I've talked about, ancient Concar Atlantis, a beautiful, perfect energy field around you where you are never hot and never cold, never tired, never hungry, never thirsty, because you are continually sustained by the inner sun. And when you're at that level of attainment, also, like you're not interacting with and experiencing physical material reality. You're not going to be like, oh, great, like now that I have this inner sun that I can feed off of and that nourishes and sustains me, I can like go around to do all sorts of cool stuff, but I'm not going to have to pay money for my groceries. You have transcended the world of matter, eating food, and yes, groceries, but you're not just going to stay here as this self-contained light eater. You end up, you're on the path of light. You are evolved beyond the level of experience and perception that others would share with you. You would become a part of the continuum of pure light in that circumstance. So it's the ultimate attainment and something very, very good. But again, when you have that attainment, you are not in this level of perception that you define as this human octave or this level of reality. That's an amazing thing to experience. We will all experience it. Joyce says, upon ascension, does the physical body spontaneously combust? If not, what happens to it? This is a great question, because a lot of people think that that's what ascension is. And I was about to refer to that book called Painting the Rainbow Body, because I've talked about it in class before. And it's a compendium of apocryphal stories of people who have attained their rainbow bodies or transcended physicality structure in being here, and they turned into pure light. And the stories, as they are related through eyewitness, do relate to stories of spontaneous human combustion. Although the people that I have heard about who spontaneously combusted were not spiritual masters in moments of attainment. Like there was one pretty famous experience of spontaneous human combustion of this lady, like just her leg bone was left behind. She lived in Florida. It was like the 1850s or something like that. But she was just like a regular lady. she like wore polyester clothes and smoked cigarettes because they investigated about whether it was her cigarette that had combusted something, and they found out no, it wasn't a traditional death like that at all. She does not sound like an ascended master. I don't think ascended masters smoke whatever, like Newport Lights or whatever it is. So I think that spontaneous human combustion is a different phenomenon, maybe an uncontrolled version or a not fully successful version of the same type of mechanics that happens. But when you ascend, or in that moment of transformation, there is a complete change of state. So we're talking about the states of matter from being a physical or liquid molecular structure into something that is pure light. And mostly you are only familiar with the process of combustion as that immediate translation. You are, of course, familiar with cellular respiration and oxidation, rust, but it would take a long time to be like, I'm an ascended master, I'm rusting into enlightenment. You'd be like, be here for a long time while you've rusted into enlightenment. But combustion is like, it happens all at once, it happens fast. But ascension is not combustion. Ascension is metamorphose, state change, transformation, and return to light speed. So it means that you do not leave behind a corpse. You accelerate your physical material matter presence to the point that it is made out of pure light as well. And this is a cognitive event, not just a biomechanical event. So like if you put someone, under a flame or in boiling water, like they are not going to ascend because they're not having the cognitive event that ascension is. When you join the path of light and the light is flowing into and through you, you will not have a distinction between self and light. You'll be like, I am light and light is me. I'm all light everywhere. You're not going to be like, I'm Aurora and this is my dog and this is my dress and this is my house. You'd be like, I am light and I'm all light everywhere. And I'm only defined by being light. Which is why you don't just hang around. When you have that ball of light that you're being sustained by in your mind, like the world of individuality and ego presence and all of these things, that they don't translate. It doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't make sense for you to be navigating the world of individuality and ego when you have achieved the attainment of returning to continuity of consciousness and oneness. Like you live in a different level of reality than individuality. So let me read your question. Your question says, if not, so ascension is not spontaneous combustion, what happens to your body when you ascend? Okay, this is the better question. When you ascend, all of the matter that you define as yourself and the body of yourself accelerates and also joins the path of light. So what you are doing as an individual metacognitive being, every cell of your body is also doing. Every cell of your body is also learning the information or light that is required to be able to eat light directly, not eat physical food, and to be at light speed. And it's a cognitive event. Every single aspect of your body and every single aspect of the physical matter that you define as self is re-accelerated to light speed. And you do not actually look like your physical form of who you are now. You actually look like light, which is why I say, you're not going to look like people think you're going to be Casper the Friendly Ghost. Like you look like the same face, but just maybe be like kind of pale or shiny. You know how you might think about culturally what a ghost looks like or something like that, but that is not what you look like. And is not the same as your astral form, which is when people in dreaming or meditations make like a copy of their biological form that is made out of mind energy. It is neither of those things. It is a identification with, association with, an embodiment of pure light, and you become made of pure light. So you will look like an abstraction, and you will look like a waveform and an abstract presence. I tell you guys this all the time. You'll still recognize me. I'll still be me, but I might not have this face. but I'll still be me. But enjoy your body and your face while you have it. But no, your light body, your information body will look totally different than your physical body. But your physical body is the precursor to your light body. And you will also transcend time, even as you're becoming this being of pure light. But that doesn't mean that the time that you spent in a physical body will be irrelevant. It does mean that the time that you spent in a physical body will remain highly relevant because your physical body becomes an anchor for the launch or a launch pad for the expansive experience you will then begin to have as pure consciousness and pure light as it flows through the continuum of all light everywhere. This is very valuable real estate. Your real estate is still relevant, even when you are no longer embedded in linear time, because there is still a version of you that you occupied at 4:14 p.m. on October 23rd of 2024 in linear time on this timeline. There's a little stick figure of you here in this class doing this right now, even while you are an impulse of light outside of time or beyond the definition of linear time, experiencing the most amazing expansive adventures. My anchor of my experience actually is ancient concurrent Atlantis. I know this is getting complex here. And I actually did a really wonderful Q&A with Lanley about my experiences in Atlantis. And so I'm going to begin sharing that to get organized. But no, she did a beautiful long interview and edited it very nicely together. So let me share that with everyone when I can. But that's where my original real estate is. And it is the not anchor, but interface through which my consciousness experiences this world, even as I have re-accelerated to pure light speed. But you're like, oh, wait a minute, you're here in this body. Like, I know. I also have the real estate of this body, which was a DIY handyman special that I came into in order to transmit this light in a very specialized circumstance. But this body is also very important, special, and valuable to me as real estate for this moment now, so I can be a conduit of light information into you guys, into this world. And also, I have made a commitment to the cellular structure of this body. Not going anywhere without my body. You will not find an Aurora corpse lying around, rotting somewhere, or have to build a funeral pyre for me. And also, because this is planetary ascension, it's not like I'm going to be like, I'm light speed, but you guys are all left behind. See you suckers. Or, you can bury my body if I had a body to be buried. No, you guys are also all accelerating too. You get it? We'll all be at infinity, moving at light speed. There will not be anyone who is around us who is not at infinity, not and moving at light speed. They will only not be. They will unbe. So this is what we will experience. We'll experience the separation of that which not is, not ising, not unbeing, and that which is being in an accelerated infinity zone, and will not experience a mortality event in the interim. And we'll do this all concurrently, synchronized all together. I know it's pretty amazing, big, important stuff, because I know mostly the paradigm or the expectation is that like someone's going to ascend, they're going to pop out of existence, and you're all going to still be in existence, and you're going to be like, bye, like, and someone's going bye, they're like ascending, they're like waving, they're like, bye-bye. Or maybe they wave like this, bye-bye, see you later. But that's not what it is, because you'll all be ascending too. We'll all be ascending. And my dog will be ascending. And my houseplant will be ascending. We'll all be ascending as this consciousness event and not leaving behind a matter body. So I made a commitment to this body when I first came into it that I'm not going to die. And that is actually why I call it a DIY handyman special. I had to do a lot of miraculous things to be able to keep my body alive and viable as a container. And then, of course, to make my body more functional and healthy so I could be here active and doing my mission and doing all the things that I'm supposed to do while I'm here. And it's a different, you put yourself on a different timeline and you move differently through time when you make that commitment to your body. I'm not judging any of you. Most of you have been highly acculturated to the concept of the necessity and inevitability of death, and also even the moral elevation of death, as there are many death cults. No offense, if it's your deeply held beliefs about people who came here and they died or they sacrificed their lives, or the necessity of dying in order to go to heavenly paradise and get your rewards. I'm not here to harm anybody or take away your beliefs or what makes you feel happy and comfortable, but I am trying to tell you that those are mostly flawed behavioral control systems, not cosmic truth, and that death is not inevitable or desirable or the only pathway to reattain light speed. And that, because when you die, what happens is your body decomposes and worms crawl in and worms crawl out and worms play pinochle on your snout. But you leave behind that matter, it does not accelerate to light speed. And then when you ascend, you do not leave behind any amount of matter. It all accelerates. But the acceleration is not as fuel in combustion, where you're kind of like, maybe you're used to the sense of like human space flight, where you have booster rockets and they burn up their oxygen and then they peel off and they fly back down to Earth, but the space capsule continues onward. I think that that has influenced human consciousness a lot in the expectation of what ascension is. People think of their physical body as like, it's going to combust like this big giant solid rocket, solid fuel booster rockets, and I'm going to kapow, I'm going to fly off into higher space of consciousness. And my consciousness is like capsule, but eventually the solid rocket boosters will burn up and just fall away and become irrelevant. People think of that as their body, like the body musculature will combust or burn away, leaving your ephemeral nature or your spirit free to fly onward. But that is not what happens in ascension. In ascension, every cell of your body also ascends. Every cell of your body has a beautiful, amazing level of sentience and self-awareness, that each part of you is also learning about itself as individuated light, and attains its own culmination of comprehension of what light is and what God's self is, even as you, as the larger organism, remember yourself as God, and the entire package of who and what you are achieves light speed. So yes, my little elbow cells will remember like, I'm an elbow cell and I'm God, or whatever. My little earlobe cells will also be like, and I'm an earlobe and I'm part of Aurora, but I'm also God. And I'll be like, and I'm Aurora and I have elbow cells and earlobe cells and I'm God. And also I live on a planet that is full of other elbow and earlobe cells that are all remembering that they're God. And they also accelerate to the point of God's self-remembrance, and the planet herself accelerates. And what really happens is all matter everywhere accelerates. So I know I talked to you about a thing that is called the entropic heat death at the end of the universe, but I hope that I did not make that too strong of a teaching, because that is a story, a narrative that is truthful in the linear world of experienced time. But when you ascend, all matter ascends with you. You do not have an end of the world. What you have is a jump forward into hyperspace, and all matter jumps forward into hyperspace. All matter, I should say, that is animated and that is eternal. Because if something is an aberration, a distortion, something that shouldn't exist, or matter or energy out of place, it does not accelerate into eternity, because it's actually like friction. And that's like the stuff that would be cleared out as particles from the easy exclusion zone water. As water is self-organized, it purifies, it takes out impurities. As consciousness is organized, it purifies and removes impurities. And those impurities are anything that is matter or energy or consciousness out of place. And it does not come with you into the next accelerated level. So the psychopathology, the crap of this world here, does not come with you. It does not come with you, nor does that crap come with you when you go through a portal, like when you go through the sun as a vehicle, like a Stargate, to get to another time space. The experience of going through the sun as a portal, I want to say burns off all the crap, but it separates your true essence from that which cannot be accelerated to light speed. And some stuff cannot be accelerated to light speed, and it does not travel with you. But your essence, that is the eternal aspect of you, can and does accelerate to light speed, and it comes with you. Now, you may have many questions. You're like, well, Aurora, will my dress accelerate to light speed? The answer is no. Be naked. How about my fillings in my mouth? Will they accelerate to light speed? The answer is no. They're foreign objects that have been adhered into your mouth crystals, but they are not actually a part of you. Like, oh no, I'm going to need dental work on the other side. No, you will not. But please know that anything that is an artifice, how about my earrings? My earrings kind of go into my ears. Will they come with me? No, they are a piece of metal. That is an inert piece of metal. That is not a piece of me. They're like, well, how about my knee was replaced and I now have a metal joint in my knee? Will it come with me? The answer is no. But how will I walk? My metal knee will be left behind. You're starting to comprehend what is going on, but you will not have a physical body that walks in a physical way. You will have to somehow replace the energy from the body part that was amputated or removed, just like anybody that has any amount of dental work. But please know that these things are not going to stop your ascension. It's really important. As you accelerate to light speed, things become possible that are not possible in the world of objective materialist science or linear comprehension of time. You will be able to do things that would be considered miraculous or supernatural, and you will be able to be whole in your holistic presence, because this also relates to what if you don't have a metallic implant, but what if instead you had an amputation? Like if somebody, whatever, chopped off your pinky toe, would you walk through eternity with no pinky toe? The answer is no. You would become whole. And so I don't have an exact answer as to the recipe as to how that happens, but I do know that that will be a big part of the journey of God attainment, God self-remembrance for many people, to the restoration of your self-state wholeness through this journey. And please know that it is possible, but I don't have an exact answer as to how it happens. And I hope that I answered this enough for your question, Joyce. You're going to add light energy to your body to accelerate it. And that light energy is not the same as like, I'm doing a lighter. Like lighting a person on fire is not the same as adding light to them and accelerating them. Burning a person is not the same as accelerating them. Informing someone is accelerating them. I'm informing you guys in this class. Thank you for presenting yourself for acceleration here in my class. When you do sun gazing, what's happening is you are getting informed from the sun. And when you get really good at it, all of that information comes inside you faster and faster and faster. Just like when you were a little kid, you were a slow reader and you were like, the cat went, and everyone is like, oh my God, this is so slow. But then when you got to be good and literate, you were like, oh, the cat went to the store. And that's what that sentence says. When you're a beginning sun gazer, it's slow and, maybe a little tedious. But as you get good at it, you get more and more and more information, become a fast reader. It comes inside of you. And not only are you better at receiving the information and internalizing it at a fast rate, you develop a great thirst for information where you're like, I got to have more, I got to know more, and I got to know it faster, and I got to have it come inside of me faster. And when you're on the path of light, you have 100% information coming into you at top speed at all times. So really you end up accelerating and being sustained by the very stuff that has accelerated you, and you require it. You cannot ever be without it. So you cannot ever be without light. And you must continue to receive an infinite amount of light and move at infinity speed in perpetuity. Okay. So now, Caroline, I'm sorry, I have to squint. Caroline, and thank you for being here. It says Crow, who is CRROW777radio.com, has recently photographed the presence of a second sun behind the sun. We see the non-CGI images of which are posted on his website. This second sun is likely to be the false sun of which you speak. Is this the black sun said to have been worshipped by the Nazis? So I haven't checked out Crow's work, but good information. So we should check it out. And hard for me to tell without looking into it, but it is very likely that people have five senses, evidence of the second sun. It is a genuine optical phenomenon that is technological. If you could build a giant ladder and climb up there and look at it, you would be able to see a thing. You'd be able to kick the tires, be like, that's definitely a thing. Some of the evidence that I'm aware of is strange shadows and light distortions that people have been seeing for years that always end up looking like different parts of what I think are the James Webb telescope. It might not be this particular telescope, but the James Webb telescope, if you look up images of that, has a giant hexagonal reflector. And a lot of what people are seeing in this world are hexagonal shaped things in their camera's imagery when they take pictures, but also hexagonal shaped beams of light that are reflecting onto their houses or the side of their barn, like big giant things where you can see like a big shadow or a big light phenomenon coming off of the sun, like a big side of a house or something like that. And you'll see these hexagonal shapes on there that would not be created through the sun. And it's not merely a lens artifact. Like if you take a picture of the sun with your camera facing directly up to the sun, sometimes you get all these weird artifacts that are just from the overwhelmingly bright nature of what the sun is versus the limitations of the optics of your camera. Duh, that's normal. But when you see this hexagonal weird shape that is projected onto the side of a barn, that is more similar to like what's happening when there's a solar eclipse, and then you see the strange crescent-shaped shadows and reflections that are happening on Earth's surface that are not just camera artifacts, but that are the direct result of changes of the quality of light that are coming from the actual emitter that's in the sky. So weird hexagonal shaped stuff and also weird lens array shaped stuff is the only way that I have to say it. They look kind of like scoopy shapes like this, or sometimes shapes like this, like parentheses, commas, and things like that, they don't look natural. And the key point is that they have not been seen in the past. Like we have had cameras for a very long amount of time and the ability to photograph these things for a very long amount of time. But no one has been seeing these things for a very long amount of time. It's only been within the past 10 or 20 years. So it's definitely a new phenomenon. So there is five senses evidence that within the past 10 or 20 years, there is an artificial light source in the sky that is emitting quality of light that is not natural. So some of this we can see in these strange shapes and shadows or reflections, but also some of it is reportage from gardeners. So I'm a gardener. I've been in California growing my cannabis plants, my CBD plants for over 10 years now, right? And when I first started growing my plants, I did not need to supplement their light, and they had their natural growth cycle, which is plant in the spring, grow through the summer, then they go through a flowering phase that is timed with the changes in the amount of light, how many hours there are during the day, and also the declination of the sun, the frequency of the light as it is moving through the atmosphere. The plants get the message from the sun, time for you to flower in early September, and then usually the harvest is around the end of October or November. This is also ancient. The life cycle of cannabis or hemp is over 5,000 years old. And I talk with other people who are gardeners who are talking about their peaches, their blackberries. The plants have been flowering or not flowering under very strange circumstances for about the past 10 years, definitely for the past 5 years. So I started to have to supplement my plants because otherwise they would flower in the middle of the summer. Middle of the summer is when there are the longest days and the most light. But my plants started to act as if it was the time of year when there is not a lot of light and there is not as bright of light. So I would have to put up artificial lights in my garden along with the regular light that is coming from the sky to fool the plants into thinking that it is actually the middle of the summer when it is the middle of the summer. So like that's normal to have to do if it is the winter time, but that is not normal to have to do in the middle of the summer. And I've been having to do that for, again, like over the past 5 years, very, very long amount of time, and have compared notes with many, many other gardeners. So my logical conclusion is that there has been something that has been going on that has been a reduction in the available amount of light that is available to plants. And plants are very specific about the light that they require and how it impacts their metabolism, their circadian rhythm, and their flowering or their fruiting mechanism. And it has been fooling plants to sometimes flower out of season or sometimes make their fruits at the wrong time. And sometimes the fruits are, small and inedible as a result of this distressed fertility cycle. And so I don't think that it's just that there's particulates in the atmosphere that is blocking out the regular amount of light from coming into our world. I think that's part of it. But I also think that there is something else that has been inhibiting the free expression of natural, original consciousness light from the sun into our world. And then I cannot speak to the motivations of the creation of the artificial sun, if it is supposedly beneficial so that our crops don't die, or if it's supposed to fool us or make us think that everything is fine, and continue with regular life. I'm not certain why it is created, but I can tell you that in terms of my light body, I consider that artificial light to be an assault. It doesn't feel good on my eyes. It doesn't feel good on my skin. It feels frying and hot, not warm and gentle. And I can remember when it felt warm and gentle and wonderful to be outside. So I limit my exposure and I protect myself. I don't wear sunglasses, but I wear a big giant hat and I put on mineral sunscreen and I protect myself from being out in the sun too much. I live in Southern California where it's also very, very sunny here. So I would encourage others to do the same thing. I love sun gazing. I'm totally connected to the sun at all times, but please do not overexpose yourself to this artificial sun, which I feel is corrosive and not nourishing in its light. And your other question is this the black sun that was worshipped by the Nazis? Hard for me to tell, because I think that the Nazis were around, ostensibly at the end of World War II in the 1940s. But I think that there was a time of the natural sun. When I first came in here in the early 2000s as a walk-in, I experienced the natural sun. And it wasn't until about the 2010s or after 2012 that I started to experience the sun simulator. So I don't think that the sun simulator is the same as whatever the Nazis would have been worshiping in the 1940s, just because the timing doesn't seem to work out. And I'm not aware of what are the qualities of the dark sun that they worshipped. But let's talk Nibiru, girl. The Nibiru time. Okay, so because when we're talking about what the Nazis might have worshipped, that sounds more along the lines of what it is called planet Nibiru. But when I'm perceiving what's going on within the past, 10 years or so of destruction and disreputable false light. So I experienced this a lot. There were a couple of years here in Southern California when we had heat waves that were not normal, even though people will always be like, oh, poo-poo, we always have hot weather and this is normal. No, we had times when it would be sometimes 120 degrees during the day and then still 90 or 100 degrees at night after the sun had already set and there was no longer optical light in the sky. And I remember going outside on some of those nights to water my whole entire garden and decorative landscape plants so they wouldn't die, because it was so hot that like plants were just desiccating in the heat. Like you had sun-dried tomatoes that were on the vine. And I felt like there was a heat that was coming from the sky that was not being emitted from the sun with optical light, but it felt like heat on my body. And that is called infrared. When you have heat that comes off of an object but not optical light, it is infrared And so an example of that would be something like a heating pad or a hot rock that you heated up in a fire, that you can feel the heat away from it without actually even touching its surface, but it doesn't look hot to you. And I felt that there was an extrasolar body, meaning something that is in the sky, an astronomical body that was emitting a huge amount of infrared into our world to the point that it could destabilize our biological processes, our farming, like, destabilize our world in a lot of ways ecologically, but we couldn't see it with our eyes. So this is all my intuition of what is going on. But I think that there has been, it is called a brown dwarf. So in stars, the formation of stars, you have to have a coalescence of enough hot gases and particulate matter coming together in the right way to create the critical mass that is the chemical and chain reaction of emitting optical light that we know as a star, and also consciousness processes. It's like a conception. Sperm meets egg in mammals, and then a baby. And the star is like the conception and genesis of a baby, of new life. But just as you know, in mammals, not every intercourse results in pregnancy. Sometimes there is a failed attempt at life. There is simply not enough matter or not things arranged optimally to be able to create a pregnancy. And that is what a brown dwarf is. It is literally a failed star. It is a star when there was not enough energy coming together in the right formats to be able to create the viable long-term emitter of light known as a star, which is a center of consciousness, which is an intelligence, which is a form of life. It is a dead thing, never had a chance to actually be alive. It did not successfully become alive because it doesn't follow these successful patterns, but it is a highly magnetic object. And what did I tell you guys today? Electromagnetism is related to the phenomenon of light. So it contains magnetism as a form of lower levels of light and consciousness. And it emits infrared, which is not optical light, but is heat. So it emits like these lower spectrum levels of light, but is not fully conscious. And I perceive that failed star, small dwarf, as coming into our solar system and really being having an impact on our world for about the past 10 years. And that has been evidenced on the satellites that measure Earth's magnetosphere. Magnetosphere of Earth is supposed to be shaped like this, but with some of the magnetic field lines kind of stretching back, like as if my hair is blowing back in the wind. But when you look at the satellite that tells us about Earth's magnetic field, there have been so many destructions of the magnetic field from the influence of this non-optically visible but perceptible body that is up in the sky, that sometimes the magnetic field lines of our planet, they look like spaghetti. Not in a good way, very, very bad way. They look very tangled and very broken and very disarranged because there's something else up there, out there, that is causing this disarrangement. And in terms of consciousness, the consciousnesses that are carried or associated with this failed star are all very malevolent. They're not life affirming or adding to life at all. They are destructive. They're anti-life. And they are destructive to systems that sustain life. And they are responsible for a lot of the metaphysical and esoteric diminishments of consciousness and destruction that we have been experiencing in this world. So that failed star sounds a lot more like the definition of a dark star or a black sun that would be worshipped by a cult of destruction similar to something like the Nazis, and has been known about mythologically for a long time. So it is believable that they would have known about it in the 1940s. Michael S. says, is love faster than the speed of light? Wow. Love does not have a speed, but thank you for this question. It is defined by, like, it's like a balanced equation, an equal amount of energy that is being given as is being received. So, sorry, you could tell that was just a little insect that was flying across. If I made a funny face, it's because I was kind of seeing it like flying through. But love is defined like when I give you $5 and you give me $5 back. That's love, actually. How fast did that transaction happen? Impossible to say. Like, are we going to say like how fast my hand came out of my wallet, or how fast was it digitally transferred into your PayPal account? Like, impossible to say. So, because I define love as this balanced dynamic, I think that you're probably defining love more according to the human anthropocentric experience of the emotion state of love. And emotion states are almost universally traveling slower than the speed of light. And also when we get to different levels of metaphysical truth, where you are on the continuum of consciousness and not individuated, then love is instantaneous as well. Because it's not like you give me $5 and I give you $5 back. It's like the truth is we both own the entire economy, and any transference of energy between us is a natural flow state of energy that is collaboratively owned or embodied by you, me, and everyone who is alive. But I appreciate your question very, very much. Thank you very much to everybody who loves Cheeky. Chris says, I like that word, transfers back to the sun, written book. Absolutely. And Joyce says, you blow my mind. I appreciate you, Professor. Thank you. You're very, very welcome. And thank you for assembling here to have your mind blown in the most positive way. Because then I want you to reconstruct yourself. I want you to be totally like this. It's and then I want you to be like, okay, disengage, think it all over, process it all, and then come out the other side. And that actually is a positive level of deconstruction so that you can then reconstruct. Think about it as like a renovation. Very, very, very pleased to blow your mind. It's like when you don't like the kitchen, you're going to tear out all the cabinets, deconstruction. This doesn't look that great. But then you're going to reconstruct things in a way that looks totally great. This is my job. I love doing it. Aurelia says, I'm working on this. Got it. You were referring to what I was saying at like around like 4:15 or so. Aurelia says, complete recalibration of this body. Yes, 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 exactly. Tom says, myself and many people speak to have observed how time is speeding up lately. Time is subjective. I'll agree to that. This observation has always been around and usually dismissed as, you're just getting old. No, but time is subjective. But let's go to your questions. Number one, have you observed the speeding up of time lately? Yes. And goes on to say, has it affected your productivity with respect to projects and goals? No. Ugh. Oh my goodness. So yes, to answer you more fully, I totally experience the acceleration of time. What on a larger sense I experience as an intensification of manifestation. Like it used to be that you would manifest something, like you think about something, dream about it, put energy into it, and it could take 5 years for it to actually happen. But then it started happening after 4 years. Then it started happening after 2.5 years. Then it started happening after a year. Then it started happening after 6 months. Then it started happening after 1 month. Then it started happening after a day. So that asymptotic curve of faster and faster manifestation of the inner world to the outer experience is part of this subjective speeding up of time. I have definitely experienced that, and I've experienced accelerated processing where the emotional learning that it takes, like after I have an experience, how long it takes to learn from that and work through my emotions has also accelerated, but I attribute that to personal acceleration, not the acceleration of our collective time engine, for lack of a better word. But I would also say I'm not more productive and not necessarily reaching my goals faster, because even while we are accelerating here, you know what they've done? Junk up the joint with this stuff that I don't like to talk about in Path of Light, but these things are huge inhibitors to getting anything done. And so it should be like, hooray, like now everything is accelerated. I'm getting so much done and I'm so productive. I should be making so many more paintings and so many more songs and so many more of this. No, because I'm spending so much of my time fighting against crap and cleaning up muddy footprints and things that shouldn't be there. So if only, girl, If only, right? But wait, but let me just say, in terms of when people dismiss you and you say time is getting faster, and say that is a artifact of aging, the answer is that time has always been subjective, although we now have clocks that measure time according to objective reality and like the vibration of a piece of quartz or something like that. So we're all on the same page as far as what is 12:15, what is 4:35. The experience of time is still totally subjective. So that means that time spent doing something that you love, like whatever, like taking a luxurious bubble bath, and like, oh, like, the time just flew by. I've spent hours in the tub and my hands are all wrinkled up, as opposed to whatever, like some laborious task or getting your root canal filled. Like that is like, like seems to last forever because time is subjective and it always has been. But our subjective rate of time and our planetary rate of time has definitely accelerated in relative context to the galactic presence, the presence of the galaxy that we find ourselves within. And all of us have sped up, not just one of us. So we, as an entire planet, as an entire solar system, and all light everywhere, we are all actually at an accelerated pace from where we were, I would say, even 5 years ago. But everything is relative. So just like, like if you're moving at infinity, but everyone around you is also moving at infinity, you don't really feel the result of that. Thank you. Number two, what you asked is, as we ascend towards light speed, what effect does this have on our perception of time with respect to this phenomenon of time speeding up for everything else? So as you get faster, you experience more stuff in each moment. To experience the world in a grain of sand and eternity in an hour. I'm trying to remember the exact poem. It is called Auguries of Innocence from William Blake. Forgive me that my memory for poems is not so perfect, but he said something like to experience eternity in an hour. And this has been related a lot to the psychedelic experience, although, of course, I don't take psychedelics and I'm not exactly a proponent of that for various reasons that I've talked about. But the acceleration that people experience when they are under hallucinogens or when you're having a deep, natural, profound personal experience of reconnection to divinity, you get faster. Okay, so when your film rate is moving faster than 26 frames per second, what you get is you perceive the world in slow motion. When you make film go faster, an old-fashioned film camera, you're like, you are from another century. I am from another century. But when you have film in a film camera that is making actual movies and you want to have slow-mo, you make the film run faster. And it means that you are able to capture more information in each moment that you are looking at. When people are accelerated through hallucinogens or through natural attainment, you can know more in each moment and process more in each moment than you were able to know and process when you were at a slower speed. So in my experience, when I have been in accelerated, naturally, elevated states, I feel like I can sense everything. Like I feel like I can sense every dust particle in the air. I can sense all of the little bugs that are flying around my house. I can sense the activity of my houseplants. I can sense what's going on with my dog. I can sense what's happening in my neighborhood. I can literally access more information and process more information about my environment than when I'm moving at a slower rate. Hope that this is like my examples weren't that great or vivid. I hope that this is really coming across to you. So you can know about more things when you're moving faster and respond to those more things faster. So what I experience now is really more like in my lasagna dance. I'm really accelerating to a very, very fast rate where my processing power increases to the size of the planet and really the entire star system. Want to make sure I'm actually answering your question. What effect does this have on your perception of time and how about everyone else? So it's definitely an individual experience. When I accelerate, not everyone around me must accelerate. So I might be experiencing much, much more than someone else. So if I am standing here, someone else, one of my people in my community is standing over there in the garden, and I'm accelerated and they're moving at regular rate, I would probably know like everything about the photosynthesis of all the plants that are in the garden and everything about all of these deep, profound interrelationships and concepts and things that are happening. And they would simply be like sitting in a bench on a bench in the garden and like looking at a pretty flower. Wow, like that flower is orange. It looks pretty. But I would know everything about like its photosynthesis cycle and the animals that are, gonna access its sap and all these different things. Like more, and your knowing is more complex and multidimensional. And hopefully it informs your journey. It's not just random, irrelevant information. Hopefully it is relevant information. When you're moving at fast speed, you should get all the information that you need to keep you safe and help you to keep moving at fast speed. And question number 3, and I love your organized questions here, says, what is happening to cause this speeding up of time? If you have observed this, yeah, the answer is a giant influx of light to our whole entire galaxy. It's actually not just Earth that is ascending. It's not just your body. It's not just your group of people. It's not just your Earth. It's not just your solar system. This mass ascension is actually the fast-making, the reacceleration of all matter everywhere. This planet is a representation of matter. We are on a rocky planet that is solid and involves the comprehension and experience of organisms in a solid form. What we do here is not merely an allegory, it is a literal template for all matter everywhere. We are literally transforming activity and the definition of what matter is through our experiences of being embodied in a physical, dense planet. Everything is going to accelerate. Everything is going to speed up. Our whole entire galaxy is speeding up. And what is making that happen, even beyond our galaxy, what is making that happen is an influx of light, an influx of more consciousness, more awareness, more information, and the greater levels of personal empowerment that happens as an inevitable result of increased information and access to awareness. So when you get more information and more access to awareness, you get the sun in the middle of your brain, and you're like, I don't need to eat food anymore. But also, I no longer live in a world of grocery stores. You live in a different world. When our whole entire galactic structure, infrastructure, gets more light, comes into it, and it accelerates, it goes faster, the whole entire apparatus or conglomeration will shift into a different context. And you will shift away from the need to have grocery stores. I have to take cheeky OUT very soon. Just get that look on her face. Oh, and Chris says, this is cool stuff. Thank you. You're very welcome. Well, that is actually a perfect completion because cheeky needs to go OUT. And you guys, your brains are liquefied and you need to reconstruct yourself around this new information that has just come to you. So let me just say, thank you so much. Profound gratitude for you are excellent students. Thank you for the excellence of your thoughts and your energy and your participation and your willingness to be here and really challenge yourself with these abstract concepts that I recognize are a huge stretching of the envelope of your expansion of your comfort zone of what you know about. But hopefully you've expanded what you can know about. And it might take time for you to really internalize and develop a facility with these concepts that I've presented to you, but hopefully through your continued learning that it will become easier and easier. Just like the first time you play a song, it's hard, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. So that is why I made these whiteboards, and I hope that people will watch them, download them, save them, return to them, watch them over and over. You don't have to watch them over and over every night, but like internalize them and then come back to them. Maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, and allow that process to continue to come through. And please know that this is in the utmost, like what I have received with this information from the stars and sharing it to you. It is my utmost effort in what I can do for the acceleration of all of us for our ascension, to accelerate all of us and dogs and cats and beautiful plant life on this world and all matter into these levels of attainment. And it's my total joy. Like, this is fun stuff to talk about. And it's fun to have a break from having to talk about a non-pristine system or all the things that are wrong in the world, and just focusing on the truthful information and sentience that is inherent within light. So I would encourage each one of you, not only like take time to process all of this, don't be gentle and compassionate towards yourself, because this is definitely heavy lifting and you have to take time to get yourself together before you're ready to lift 500 pounds again. So just take some time to rest. But then also, please know that this is the truest expression that I can bring to you through words, something that's very difficult to express through words, but that this is an aspect of what is needed to accelerate. That this is, I'm giving you accelerant, I'm giving you gasoline or stuff that will make you go, it wasn't quite right, but make you go faster. So yeah, it's my utter joy to be able to do this. And also, I've always intended for a part 2. This is really only part 1 of the Path of Light, but I haven't received clarity on the information that I want to share about part 2. But it has to do with black holes. It has to do with the life cycle of stars. It has to do with black holes as transformative structures in the fabric of the space-time consciousness fabric, and what things were like in a pristine world known as Atlantis, where no death experience was experienced, and what black holes were like there, and many other questions. Because as I am learning about this, of course, I develop more and more questions that I then want to develop into more curriculum that I can share with you guys. So this has been the expression of my own mind questing about these concepts, and then translating it into what should be accessible verbal and, alphanumerics and diagrams that you guys can know about. But it's not the end. I absolutely intend to share more, but I have to be compassionate to myself. I had to let my muscles rest, sometimes for a couple of years, to be able to talk about this more. Very welcome. Lisa says, thank you for everything. Lewis says, thank you. Much gratitude. You're so welcome. Tom says, thank you. You're very welcome. Chris says, excellent information. Completely enjoyable. Thank you so much, Aurora. And cheers, Cheeky. Good job. Thank you for that. And Pedro says, love the light and the lasagna. You're so welcome. Love you too. Lantis, this is a plug for a new interview about Atlantis with Aurora. Oh yeah, totally. So Lamley, I want you to know, like I said to everyone, we did a beautiful interview and then another one, and then I'm sure there will be more coming up, but I want to make sure I'm going to share that first one too. And Caroline says, love, light, and so much gratitude for these transformational teachings and for sharing the brilliance of your presence. What a beautiful comment. Thank you so much. It is totally my cosmic joy to do so. And I'm telling you, like, this is who I really am. This is what I really like to do. I would like to just sit around with all of you guys all day long and just talk about the miracle abstraction of what light is, and not ever have to deal with or refer to or be limited by any of this stuff. So let's keep that as a goal. Let's say the world that we are building is a world of this beautiful, pure light and our journey of acceleration, and we will not have poop crapola and obstacles and things trying to diminish us as we're moving forward in this way. Beautiful. And Lan has shared the video sharing of where you can find that first interview. Yeah, and Aurelia says, you're very welcome, Atom. And Aurelia says, we are on track on this mission, kicking ass. I love it. Your attitude is great. And thank you for coming here with all of your energy, ready to really work your muscles and do so much. My love and respect, truly, to all of you as beautiful students and as beautiful participants. And of course, to anyone who catches this in the archive or anybody who wasn't able to be here during the recording of this class, love and respect to you as well. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. And next week, we are starting again. You don't even get to have a week off. You get to work your muscles. Next week, we restart the semester 2025, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.